Ladies and gentlemen, the academic 5 minutes is past, so we would like to start the second day of our conference. The first point is the protection of the European border and the problems of the illegal migration. The rules are really similar than yesterday, so after the first and second speech, everyone who give a sign to me that he would like to take a speech or have a speech, it's absolutely possible until 2 minutes, unfortunately not more, because this program will finish at 12 o'clock. I will speak, my lecture is on Hungarian language, so please use the interpreter. Hölgyeim és uraim!
Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's safe for me to say that this current item on the agenda, or this session, the protection of the external borders of the European Union and the issue of illegal migration, is indeed a problem, an issue. If we cannot resolve it, not just manage it, but resolve it, it will lead to the death and dismantling of the European Union. This statement is underlined more than ever than the fresh news of this morning. The head of the largest European state, Mr. Olaf Scholz, announced practically that Germany will reintroduce border control in all of its land borders and various other measures to curb illegal migration and other criminal activities, which at the same time constitutes the end of the Schengen Agreement. Hungary, at the very beginning of the migratory or migration issue, assumed the position according to which Hungary will protect the external Schengen borders of the European Union. This is a 70-kilometer length of border towards Ukraine and a 175-kilometer border crossing section towards Serbia. But back in 2015, we had a much longer border towards Croatia as well, which was then not a Schengen border. We considered two legal acts as the basis of this. One is the asylum agreement of the UN, which states that the refugee must stop at the first safe country and submit any application for staying there. And the other one is the Schengen Convention, which means that no one can be allowed into Europe through the Schengen external borders who does not have any documentation, passport, visa, etc. Since the position of Hungary is very special, and not counting Ukraine, you cannot arrive to us if you have not yet passed a third but safe country. Therefore, the position of Hungary was very clear and strict from the very beginning. As of 2015, 1,200,000 measures were taken by the Hungarian National Police in relation to stopping illegal migrants. And in the meanwhile, naturally, since 2014 on the Ukrainian border, we have been receiving Ukrainian refugees. And just as a matter of interest, while on the southern border, the Schengen border, 99.9% of those attempting to illegally cross the border, that's 1,200,000 individuals, do not cooperate with the authorities and have no documentation. They are obviously lying about their country of origin and their personal data, but at the same time, those crossing the Ukrainian border, 100% of them are fully cooperative with the Hungarian authorities, displaying documentation even if they have expired, and they announce valid personal data. So it is obvious that the willingness to cooperate in the case of those fleeing from a war is 100%, whereas on the southern border no one is willing to cooperate with the Hungarian authorities or any other authority for that matter. If we look at the proportions, 1,200,000 measures were taken by the Hungarian police starting with 2015 on the southern border of Hungary. And on the Ukrainian border, since 2015, fewer than 100 measures, police measures, had to be taken. So the number of those attempting illegal border crossing was that low. Naturally, we acknowledge that not everyone thinks the same way on illegal migration as we do, yet we do believe that regardless of the fact that you can have various ideas on illegal migration, the Schengen Agreement and the asylum conventions of the UN have to be complied with. That is how strict the Hungarian approach is to protecting the external Schengen borders of the European Union. And Hungary implemented all this in the following way. As of 2015, over 2 billion euros were spent on this action, which did not include any European funds. In other words, the European Union did not support or subsidize the border protection efforts of Hungary. Frontex did visit Hungary. Frontex noted the situation, but no substantial help was provided by them in protecting the external Schengen borders. In accordance with that, Hungary continues to fund border protection from its own national budget. Ladies and gentlemen, on the details and the position of the Hungarian government, I would now, to represent those, I would call two speakers. But before that takes place, allow me to share with you a brief video presentation on the situation on the southern border of Hungary, just to see what I mean when I say that the illegal migrants do not cooperate with Hungarian authorities. Please play the video.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So, as you could see in the footage, it's not rare to see violence against the border control police and authorities. The weapons have been used, sharp, and whether the migrants used against the Hungarian border authorities. The latter do not use any sharp weapons and also try to control the illegal migration that would not harm anybody. And they always escort them back to the other side of the border. And we also ask them to, in Serbia and Belgrado, go to any embassy of Hungary or any other EU member country's embassy and apply for an asylum application, and then it's going to be, to launch a normal procedure. Ladies and gentlemen, after this short introduction, I kindly ask Bence Rétvári, Deputy Minister of the Interior of Hungary, to deliver his speech. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much for having me here. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you very much for inviting me here. And it is a great pleasure for me to address you and to tell you about the external border control, because that is a very good example to show how migration policy can work well, of course, along with many other models. First and foremost, I would like to thank you for attending this conference here, because we Hungarians are quite used to that, in terms of our migration policy, that people form opinion without knowing the fact. You actually have come to Budapest. It's an honor and a delight for us to welcome you here, and we really appreciate that you are gaining information on the side, and maybe some of you can even go to the border, and if you would like to do that, we are really happy to show you how that works, how border control works. So thank you very much indeed, and we and the Ministry of Interior, we always attend these meetings that are on migration, which is one of the top priorities of security in Europe. So as it is also part of this conference, so it is a pleasure for us to welcome you all here. And what you could see in this footage is not an American action movie. It's not part of that. It was not created by fiction. It is the reality. It is the absolute reality at the Hungarian border every day and for years by now. These videos were recorded by the smart fans and also and partly by the smugglers, because they are promoting themselves on the internet, because they show how well they can cut the fence and how they fight the Hungarian police. You could see when the Hungarian police arrive, they don't show IDs. They throw whatever they can, they throw at the police. You could actually see weapons, and you can actually see guns, as you can see in this video. I would also like to express my gratitude to the Hungarian police and the border control authorities, that they've been protecting the Hungarian borders since 2015. So this is the reality. In Western Europe, it is not shown like this quite often. It is being censored. You don't really see the reality. But if you do want to see the reality, you must see that people come here without any documents, and they are rather aggressive, and we always come here with the help of smugglers. The Hungarian migration policy hasn't changed since 2015. There are just not many countries like that who hasn't had to change the migration policy since then, and it simply, quite clearly and briefly can be summarized. So the foundation of all of this is that one must defend the external borders. The other foundation is that the asylum procedure must be carried out outside of the European Union, because in our experience, if we do not defend our external borders, in other words, anyone can just walk in, those people will not wait until the end of the procedure, and they will not undergo the deportation, but they spent years in the European Union. In terms of different terror attacks, we could see that by the time they got as far as that, they'd been to several European Union countries. So the most important is to defend the Hungarian borders. That's the reason we built the fence. You can see it's a double fence. It's a smart fence, so it senses any movements, and it's at night, and that's why we mobilize lots of police forces and border control. That's why we defend the external borders. And the fact that there are more and more internal border controls are being restored within the European Union, that only shows its importance. So if we could keep all of this outside of the external borders, we wouldn't be face all these problems within the European Union. So only those people should be allowed to cross the external border of the EU if they have the papers, the documents, the permission, and once they have completed the asylum procedure. If someone is not entitled to be in the European Union, it should not be in the European Union. It's crystal clear. It is also as according to the Schengen agreement, and the procedure must be carried out outside of the European Union. As I mentioned earlier, once we let somebody into not only the EU, let alone the EU, but to Europe, once they're here, it's almost certain that if they want to, they can stay here. Until we stand up together to defend the borders, the smugglers are going to dictate. As many people they bring over, that many people will cross the border. You know, if it depends on them. If someone flies here, wants to come here legally, the ticket costs about 500 euros. Compared to that, it is much more expensive to come here with the help of smugglers, and they know the fees. They have fees. Organized crime has their fees for smuggling, because they just tell the prices. From Turkey to Serbia, it costs 4,600 euros. It's 2.2 million, 200,000 million forints. And from Turkey to Austria, that route costs 9,500 euros, 3.5 million forints. The most popular one is Turkey-Germany route. The smugglers' fee is 14,000 euros per person. That is more than 5 million forints, and 500 euros would be the ticket. They pay 14,000 euros to be able to come here illegally to the European Union. So that only shows that it is more, the illegality is more important. It would be much cheaper for them to come here legally. So coming to Europe illegally is not a solution for poor people. If you have a lot of money, that's when you can come here illegally. If you don't have that much money, you can only come here legally, because you only have to pay 500 euros. As we could hear it previously from the chair, there are almost 1 million failed attempts to cross the border. It failed because it was stopped by the Hungarian authorities, and we are very thankful, and that's why we have such a public security here in Hungary. So in recent years, we've been attacked from different pressure. We've been under pressure politically, but we never had any financial support. 2 billion euros have been spent on the border control, external border control. From these 2 billion euros, almost 1 million illegal border crossing attempts have been stopped. Just imagine how many more illegal migrants would be in Europe, how much more risk that would be, terror risk, if we Hungarians have not kept them outside of the Europe. And it was not only not acknowledged. I mean, we are acknowledged because it's what the Hungarian citizens want, but the political pressure and along legal procedures, we also had a 200 million euros fine and a 1 million euro daily fine. we can't accept that, because that is putting pressure on us, and we do want to keep protecting the external borders, which are the external borders of the European Union as well as Hungary. And so this 2 billion euros claim, I mean that should be at least partially covered by the European Union, because we are also protecting the European Union's external borders. I think this should be the way to go. So that European countries, EU countries, should work together in protecting the external borders. It's about 400 kilometers of external, and we need 7. The European Union has got 7,500 kilometers of internal borders, and all we needed to protect is this 4,000 external ones. And then you shouldn't have what the French, the Germans too, in terms of closing their internal borders within the European Union. We do not see any support on the horizon that they would fund the external borders in defense with police force, as well as with the right legislation. We actually only see the opposite in this gigantic fine that we got. I really want to show you once the sun sets down, when it's dark, how they cut the fence, how they climbed, how they try to divide the police force, how the police are trying to catch them. There's nothing illegal in what the Hungarian authorities do, because this is absolutely legal, and in our opinion, this should be done in the other European countries too. You must have read in the news, if the European Union would force Hungary to let the illegal migrants come in, then the necessary, after having completed the necessary procedure, we are happy to pay a one-way trip from Röszke, the border station, to Brussels. We pay it for them. If the Commission wants to see these migrants, we're happy to bring them there, one way to Brussels. Of course, after the having completed the right asylum procedure. Of course, that's not what we want. We still want the external borders to be protected, and we are really willing to show them to you, and so you can come and see it. This is the Hungarian migration policy: to simple borders, protecting the external borders, and the asylum procedure should be carried out outside of the European Union. And thank you very much again for being here in Budapest. Thank you very much for visiting our capital. We think it's the most beautiful one in the world. And thank you for visiting our parliament building. Thank you for listening to us. And we are also very curious to listen to your interviews and presentations. We hope that sooner or later we can all commonly together protect Europe.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Hungary is protecting the Schengen borders and the European Union, and compared to its GDP, proportionately, it spends the most amongst the European countries on the aid programs, which target countries that most of the migrants come from. This is called the Hungary Helps program. We provide support for schools and hospitals. We build schools and hospitals, build shelters, and we support investments that are shown to us by the locals, because we believe that the trouble should not be imported here, but help should be taken to where it is needed. The next speaker is the Deputy Chief of Commissioner of the Hungarian National Police, Mr. János Zoltán Kucik. Distinguished Chair, distinguished State Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, may I also extend my most cordial welcome to you in Budapest. In 2015, a never before seen migration was what Hungary had to face, posing a huge challenge for the Hungarian National Police. Over 400 1,000 individuals attempted to illegally cross the border, against whom policing measures were taken on the Schengen external border or in depth within the territory of Hungary. This high number of illegal migrants arriving in Hungary constituted a security challenge as well, and in 2015 neither the border control infrastructure nor the legal environment was adequate enough for us to perform our activities and handle this problem of the high number of migrants and human smugglers. That is why we had to erect a fence, a security defense facility at the border of Hungary. From 2015, migratory emergency was called by the Hungarian government. International regulation is very important from our aspect of work, namely the Schengen Code, which provides the legal grounds for my colleagues to stop those attempting to cross the border illegally, since the Schengen Code clearly states that the Schengen border can only be crossed at border crossing points. The other act that we used as a legal basis was the act on the state borders of Hungary, which provided for us that in the case of a migratory emergency, we were allowed to escort those arriving into Hungary illegally back across the fence. In order for the Hungarian National Police to perform its task, we required not only an amendment of the legal background and a modification of the technical facilities available, but we also had to employ further personnel, and we required an extra 3,000 more troops. Added to that later was 4,000 so-called border patrol officers. The change in the legal background and establishment of necessary infrastructure and the employment and deployment, rather, of the trained personnel results in the fact that from 2015 to 2019, we could substantially decrease the number of illegal migrants entering into Hungary and traveling on to Western Europe, mainly from Arabic states. However, after this period, there was a sharp increase in the number of illegal migrants who wished to illegally cross the border of Hungary and the Schengen external border. Initially, this was 50 individuals per day, but in 2022, there were 740 policing measures taken on average daily. The total number neared 300,000. That is why, if we add the number of police measures as of 2015 or 2015, we took policing measures against over 1 million individuals who attempted or succeeded in illegally crossing the border of Hungary. In October 2022, there was a day, just to share with you some figures so you can imagine the burden, the workload on my colleagues, when 2,300 illegal migrants arrived on a single day, against whom policing measures had to be taken. But the growth was not only visible in the number of illegal migrants, but we had to increasingly prepare ourselves for attacks being perpetrated against border control officers. Initially, sand and earth, but later stones and sticks were used in the course of these attacks. But after that, catapults, knives, and even firearms were used to attack the police officers and the border patrol officers on the border. 750 personnel were attacked, and 51 of them were injured, and I actually had a colleague who suffered serious injuries during the course of these attacks perpetrated by the illegal migrants. But any who followed the migratory action noticed that in October 2022, illegal migrants and the human smugglers were chased by police on the M5 motorway, and the smugglers fired live ammunition at the police. But the most dangerous event occurred on September 20th, 2022, when the Serbian-Hungarian joint patrol, and in fact here I have to mention that we have an excellent cooperation between the two authorities. Information is shared on a daily basis, and our colleagues were performing joint patrol duty when automatic weapons were fired at them. And it was very difficult to evacuate the two police officers without them suffering injuries. The security fence is actually compiled of two fences, two lines of fences, in between which there is a road, and it was very dangerous to be there. We only allow our police personnel to enter that part, the area between the two fences, wearing a helmet and a ballistic vest. It's very sad when our personnel is attacked, but the fence itself was often damaged in order to gain access to the Schengen area. Electric tools were used to cut through the fence, and the damage has amounted to 41 million euro in the past period. 41 million euro actually includes the cost of maintenance and repairs. You could see on the video that attacks are not only suffered by the police officers, and there's not only fence that is cut, but serious damages are caused to the vehicles that are used for patrol duties on the border. 373 attacks were perpetrated against these vehicles, which are rendered immobile with the help of stones, sticks, and iron rods. The damages amounting to almost 1 million euro. This violent behavior that we perceive on the state border has expanded onto our road network as well. Although 94% of illegal migrants are stopped at the state border of Hungary with the help of the technical tools and the legal background provided for our personnel, yet there still are some who manage to enter the country. And these individuals are often transported by human smugglers with vehicles of very bad quality, completely disregarding the rules of transportation. And unfortunately, multiple fatalities have occurred due to this. The most grievous event in December 2021, when 7 individuals died. In order to maintain public order in Hungary, and based upon the surveys of multiple touristic organizations, Hungary still remains the safest, one of the safest countries in the world. But in order to maintain that, we have to stop illegal migrants from entering the country. As a first step, we deployed thousands of personnel on the Serbia-Hungarian border, and depending on the pressure suffered, there are 500 to 1,000 police officers on duty on the border. But many countries recognize the fact that Hungary requires help, and this is here where I wish to offer my heartfelt thanks. As of 2020, we received police officers from Austria who participated in the apprehension of 45,000 illegal migrants. As of December 2021, Turkish police officers arrived to Hungary who are on duty on the border, and they aided us in apprehending 10,000 individuals. As of 2022, we have Czech police officers who aided us in 60,000 apprehensions, and since 2022, we have Slovak police officers as well. And in fact, the control of trains bound for Western Europe is constantly ongoing, and patrol jointly with Hungarian, Austrian, and German police officers. As of 2015, almost 6,000, to be precise, 5,600 Hungarian police officers were on duty in the Balkan region within the framework of Frontex to help the police work of countries south of Hungary, and therefore also providing help for the officers on duty on the Hungarian border, since we can stop the illegal migrants further away from the border. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. At the end of this point, you can answer the questions and speakers. Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, now I close the applications because we've got more than 33 applications. Now the speakers are following. Please watch the 1.5 minutes. So that's the time of the one speech. After the 2 seconds, the machine automatically switch off the speaker's microphone. The first one is Thomas Lenz from Poland, as a member of the Troika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, European Union face more challenges in the field of the protecting the borders than ever. The threatening example of that is politics run by Russia and Belarus. Those two countries organized the illegal immigrant smuggling, and Poland and European border is constantly in danger of the organized attacks. Polish soldiers were killed, yes, and injured on that border. In this difficult situation, the ongoing support of the European Union is crucial for the government of Donald Tusk as well as the Polish people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Griederius Surplis from Lithuania.
Thank you, dear Chair. Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the representatives of Hungarian government for your presentations. When in 2015 Hungary erected your physical barrier, it was seriously criticized, but today Lithuania has also erected a similar protection. Finland is building that. So in these extremely turbulent times, we must be vigilant and resolute, protecting the Schengen borders. Strong external borders, resilient to various challenges and threats, are key for EU internal security. The EU should accelerate efforts towards comprehensive, digitalized and well-integrated European border management system and shift to border defense. This process should include consistent and standardized investment into external border infrastructure, including counter-mobility measures, as well as equipping border guards. We face military conflicts around Europe. The climate change threatens even larger numbers of migrants. Without dealing with causes, we will never be able to guarantee our security and care for those millions of people coming. So we have to deal with causes of migration outside Europe, first of all. Instrumentalized migration as a form of a hybrid attack by the hostile regimes of Russia and Belarus in the north of Europe continues to pose a serious threat to our national security and stability. We should revise the EU legal framework and tools to be better equipped in responding to this challenge. We also advocate for strengthening cooperation with NATO, using the existing tools and resources to raise the situational awareness and threat assessment, analyzing patterns and tactics of instrumentalization of migration, strengthening resilience and reinforcing.
Sorry, this is the machine. The next speaker is Pepijn van Hovelingen from Netherlands.
Thank you. As you might know, we had an election last year in the Netherlands, and mass migration was a main issue. And as a result of this election, we now have a government which is very much trying to tackle this issue. And our Secretary of Asylum has announced that she will enforce the most strict policies ever in the Netherlands with regard to mass migration. So you can expect that the Dutch government will also try to control its own borders, and we applaud Germany that they will do the same. They announced it yesterday. We are thankful for Hungary that they try to enforce the controls on the EU borders. And to summarize, so we will have a very strict migration policy in the Netherlands the coming years. and we will check our own borders, and in accordance with the Dublin agreements, we will send also migrants back to Belgium and Germany. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Hulusi Akar from Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A comprehensive and sustainable approach to migration management necessitates international, regional, and global cooperation. Turkey is located on migration routes and hosts the largest number of the refugees in the world. Turkey effectively combats illegal migration and the smuggling of migrants. In the last 2 years, Turkey has caught more than 20,000 immigrant smugglers and 400,000 irregular immigrants. Turkey has also continued to take all measures against foreign terrorist fighters, namely Daesh, and neutralized more than 4,500 of them. In addition, we have deported more than 10,000 suspected foreign terrorist fighters and prevented more than 120,000 of the FTFs from entering our country and region. Turkey has fulfilled its obligations under the Turkey-EU Statement on Migration signed in 2016, closing the Aegean route to prevent the loss of lives. Turkey expects the EU to fulfill its commitments and take concrete steps, particularly on visa liberalization, the accession process, and the upgrading of the customs union. Given the geographical and strategic location of Turkey, it's important to recall that the protection of the EU's external borders and the fight against illegal migration and terrorism begin at the Turkish borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Glenn Bedingfield from Malta.
Thank you. Maltese people are acutely aware of the challenges posed by illegal migration and the protection of our shared and external borders. Malta believes that a broad and fair approach is essential, one that balances security with compassion, safeguarding our borders while upholding human dignity and international obligations. Protecting the EU's external borders requires enhanced cooperation, solidarity, resource, and most of all, burden sharing across all member states. Europe must act decisively to dismantle human trafficking networks and secure our borders, but at the same time, a sustainable solution to migration involves addressing the root causes such as conflict, poverty, and climate change in the countries of origin, and we ought to commit to reinforcing partnerships with third countries to address this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is from Finland, Jukka Kopra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, dear friends. We as parliamentarians, we have to do everything to protect the security and legitimacy of European Union. And protecting our borders, containing the situation in our borders is one vital task in this task we have to maintain security and legitimacy of the Union. Now, illegal immigration, as we have heard, is one of the imminent threats at the moment to these goals we have to keep up. And also, it is one of the key challenges for us too. Now, this imminent illegal immigration challenge has to be addressed seriously and as fast as possible. And as we have heard, some countries are doing more than their share to protect the security and contain the situation at the moment. And may I remind you that Finland also has had to close its eastern border towards Russia to prevent this build-up of a new illegal route to Europe from Far East and Middle East. And we have signs that this build-up of the instrumentalized migration route from Russia is clearly supported by the Russian government. Now, what we have heard from the keynote speakers, I fully support the ideas that we should do more. We should give finance to those countries who protect the outside border of the EU and also change European legislation so that this very hard task would be easier. Also, I would appreciate that we would sort of re-evaluate and restructure the formament of Frontex organization so that their task would be more to help us prevent the
Thank you very much. Nicolas Pasca de la Parte.
Thank you very much. I think that we agree that migration is one of the most important issues for all our countries and for the European Union as such. It is actually an essential issue. But protecting our borders, need as it be, is not only it's only part of the solution. We have to have a multi-layer approach to migration, because migration as such is not a threat. Could be even an opportunity for everybody if it is good regulated through the regular channels. Could be a good opportunity and a benefit for the countries of origin, for the countries of transit, and for the countries of destination. Our people is waiting for us to offer solutions that we select the proper immigrants that could be integrated in our labor market and in our societies. Because we have to be aware that our demographic pyramid is as it is, and we will need migrants in the near future, but the right migrants through the legal channels. And keep in mind one thing, development in third world countries and African countries will mean in the near future more migrants to Europe, more pressure, not less. When a country reaches some degree of economic development, their citizens emigrate abroad better and in bigger numbers than when it is a real poor country. It's a real poor country, the immigration is within Africa and the neighboring countries. But when a country is developing, it's sending people abroad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hristo Kazdiev from Bulgaria.
Chair. Dear colleagues, the tackling of illegal migration is a joint effort that we have to make, all of us, fighting the illegal entrance within the European Union. Several facts. The land border between Bulgaria and Turkey is the biggest on the Euro-Mediterranean land route. The Kapakule-Kapitan Andreevu Czech border crossing is the busiest in Europe. And for the last several years, more than 6 police officers lost their lives fighting with traffickers. With that in mind, we've managed to achieve a lot of measures, including smart border control, and with the cooperation with the Turkish authorities, we've established more than 70% of diminishment of attempts to enter the European Union since the last year. So, with the cooperation with the Romanian and with the Greek authorities, we've managed to cope more than 80% of internal crossing between our countries. So by now, the Eastern Mediterranean route is not that popular as it was several years ago. But having said that, the continuation of the postponement of European and of Bulgarian and Romanian land accession to Schengen is hurting not the migration and the illegal migrants, it's hurting European economy and it's hurting European citizens, and that must stop, and we have to enter Schengen area together and to form our own economic space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Dimitrios Kairidis from Greek.
Thank you. I speak to you not only as a member head of the Greek delegation, a country that is at the forefront of the problem of illegal migration, but as a former minister of migration. And in that capacity, let me assure you that Turkey does not implement the 2016 joint statements. Since 2019, the last 5 years, there has been not a single return of an asylum seeker from Greece back to Turkey. And there are all sorts of other problems. We welcome the visa facilitation. We welcome the visa facilitation for Turkish citizens and the Turkish visitors coming to Greece as a result, a program that we introduced a few months ago. On top of that, we have the instrumentalization of migration from the Turkish authorities back in March 2022 when you were Minister of Defense. Now, we need a balanced approach. We need more to do with protecting the border, more returns, more cooperation against smuggling, but we also need legal pathways to migration according to our needs and priorities and choices. And as far as Hungary is concerned, it's good to hear all this, but to a big extent, this is all irrelevant for the Greek experience. Irrelevant. And it is irrelevant because Hungary is a landlocked country. It is easy to patrol the land and erect fences. What do you do with the sea? Greece has 16,000 kilometers of a coastline. Where does the protecting border stop and protecting human life begins? So the problem is much more complicated, much more complex than the simplicities and the simple rhetoric that we have heard, I'm afraid, from our Hungarian colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pavle Arsovsky from Macedonia.
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, the migration pressure at the borders along the Western Balkan routes is still present. I still remember September 2015 and outbreak of the refugee wave from Greece to our southern border, when I, as a general commander of the army, deployed the very first time army units in support to border police to deal and manage with the situation. Now we are 2024, the state of emergency is still there, and our soldiers are still there. From refugee crisis, from Syria mostly, through months and years, it evolved into migrant crisis. This non-military threat exposed all countries along the Western Balkan route and Central Europe, and obviously showed defiances in crisis management. The reaction of EU by deploying Frontex to North Macedonia was obviously a right call. Frontex established very successful operational framework together with Macedonian law enforcement and army units on our border to Greece. 100 plus Frontex police officers are constantly present and effective, and we are very grateful to all countries, Hungary among them, which contribute to this mission. The key goal of the state is focused in two directions. One is to have human approach, respecting all human rights, and on the other hand, to preserve the safety of our citizens and the state. North Macedonia is systematically involved in the process of finding an answer within the framework of the European global approach to dealing with the regular and irregular migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Rafael Damián Lemus from España.
Gracias. Solamente en el año 2024, en lo que llevamos de 2024, en España han llegado en torno a 24.898 personas inmigrantes. En España sabemos en este momento lo que significa sufrir la llegada masiva de inmigrantes. Este debate es necesario en la Unión Europea, pero es necesario el debate con aptitud y, sobre todo, con legitimidad, con coherencia y con verdad. Según Frontex, la Agencia Fronteriza y Guardia Costera Europea, Rusia está utilizando la inmigración como un arma en un juego de influencias y presión. Según expertos, grupos de mercenarios, entre los que se incluye el grupo Wagner, han estado alimentando el fenómeno migratorio mediante el aumento de la inestabilidad y la violencia en determinadas partes de África, moviendo a dichos inmigrantes hacia las fronteras y apoyando a los traficantes de estas personas en la zona. Miren, señorías, lo que no se puede es utilizar la inmigración ilegal para hacer política.
We can't use illegal migration to build a policy upon that. But however, there are political parties in Europe that use migration in this term. So we accept migrants in masses in Spain. We can't translate it into a terror attack. Particularly in Spain, we can't equal the two. And so I would really like to not have it used according to the interests of the different parties.
Gianlacomo Calconini from Italy.
Thank you, Chairman. The immigration issue is probably one of the most important challenges for the Union. And first of all, we have to tell the truth to ourselves. Mistakes and failures are more than success on this issue. If we are not able to defend our borders, our land, and if the trade immigrants is managed by criminal organizations, something is not right. We cannot accept that women, children, and men have to pay thousands of euros to hope a better future crossing the Mediterranean. And it doesn't always happen. Often we have talked about the right not to emigrate, and from here we have to start. It's good that Ursula von der Leyen announced a commissioner for the Mediterranean, but we still have a lot to do. In Italy, we think that Africa is an important key, and for us, collaboration with the countries of this continent is the future. That's because our government announced the Mattei Plan for concrete growth in Africa. Healthcare, agriculture, water, energy are just some of the topics that we want to work with African friends. Many non-European countries have already been in Africa, but it's not too late for us. Italy is in the front for this project, but we believe with Europe countries at our side, we can do it better for us. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Georgita Mindruta from Romania.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear friends, I would like to start by thanking our Hungarian colleagues for organizing this conference. And Romania is actively engaged in the regional cooperation platform that tackles migration all of root issues together with the Commission, Austria, Bulgaria, Hungary, Greece, and Slovakia. In addition to this, we have implemented joint compensatory measures in view of lifting the land borders control at the Romania-Bulgaria and Romania-Hungary land borders, such as joint operations for prevention and detection of cross-border crime, fight against illegal migration, joint patrols in border areas, joint risk analysis, and operational situation analysis in the adjacent border areas, and real-time exchange of information. In addition, we have efficiently applied Dublin regulation and have a 79% transfer rate of third country nationals. Well, Romania welcomes the joint implementation plan presented by the Commission on 12th of June 2024 that offers the necessary guidance and support for the implementation of the Pact on Migration and Asylum. For the elaboration of the national implementation plan, we have put in place at national level an interinstitutional coordination mechanism. Nevertheless, we need to continue to fight against migrant smuggling, including by further consolidating the Global Alliance Against Migrant Smuggling, launched at the conference on 28th of November 2023. Last but not least, completing the accession to the Schengen area by lifting the controls at the land borders is very important for us. And I take this opportunity to thank you for including this priority in your presidency program. And we are looking forward for your continued support in the following months for this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Marina Pende, Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Illegal migration and human trafficking are security issues for every country. Because of that, BiH, Bosnia and Herzegovina, give full support to every country in protection of their borders from all threats, as well as from illegal migration that can have negative internal influence on security. Having in mind that South European countries or Balkans countries, as you say, surrounded by EU member states, we expect closer and much more fruitful cooperation with the European Union in protecting of Bosnia and Herzegovina from illegal migration and human trafficking. However, it is maybe even better to work on prevention and on proactive action in order to prevent influx from the illegal migration countries and in order to help in strengthening of democracy in those countries. I see illegal migration like asymmetric threats. Because of that, prevention, proaction must be our global goal in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Katja Chilosini from Georgia.
Dear colleagues, protecting external borders and combating illegal migration is an increasingly important aspect of international security and stability. Since the introduction of the visa-free regime, the government of Georgia has introduced a number of measures to meet this challenges that we are facing from different aspects. So what we did was that we have adopted the strategy for the integrated borders management, and the unified risk analysis systems was established in Georgia. Also, we started closer cooperation with the European Border and Coast Guard Agency to have a better access to protect our citizens from illegal migration, and also to protect the border of Georgia from different illegal immigrants. So as you know, my country is 20% of the country is occupied by Russia, and of course we have border security challenges as well as the migration challenges. With the granting Georgia candidate status, we are very much looking forward to open the accession talks and to ensure that the security and immigration aspects are part of our future cooperation as well. And I believe that with the joint efforts, we can do much to ensure stability, security, and better migrant control within Europe and next to the Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Christine Schwarz-Fuchs from Österreich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We believe the new Asylum and Migration Pact represents a crucial step forward. Austria, in particular, suffers significantly from the unequal distribution of migration, with the second highest per capita share in the EU after Cyprus in 2023. An effective implementation of the pact is vital to uphold our values and our security. In addition to the Asylum and Migration Pact, it is crucial that we develop new solutions to prevent irregular migration. To address this challenge effectively, we must establish long-term partnerships with key countries along migration routes, particularly in North Africa. These partnerships will help us build sustainable frameworks to manage migration at its source. We also need to strengthen and adapt the concept of safe third countries, ensuring it meets today's realities. Equally important is bolstering the EU's return policy, including the creation of return hubs in third countries to streamline and facilitate the return process. By working together and reinforce these measures, we can achieve a fairer, a more secure and a sustainable migration system. Our goals are clear: strengthen border protection, ensure fairer distribution of asylum seekers, and work towards long-term solutions, including addressing the root causes of migration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Cosmo Adrian Feliciani from Romania.
Tisztelt elnök úr, tisztelt képviselőtársak!
Distinguished Chair, distinguished fellow parliamentarians, first of all, allow me to deliver my heartfelt thanks for organizing this very important conference. Today's topic is very significant, taken into consideration the current situation. Romania remains committed to the highlighted protection of the external borders of the European Union, and therefore, in this year, March, we reached an agreement with the European Commission that we would extend our pilot projects already operational on the Serbian border based upon an action plan. This pilot project has delivered tangible results and resulted in best practices. Illegal migratory flows on the Serbian borders have diminished to practically zero, and according to our plans, we would extend these procedures onto our other external borders. Our border protection infrastructure is ready to manage any crises As we have stated in our reports, we have supported the adoption of the Asylum and Migration Pact, and we believe that the adoption of this pact is a very important step towards the right direction. The pact provides new commitment to the member states in their fight against illegal migration. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is José Luís Carneiro from Portugal.
The way we treat immigrants is our most important high watermark of our humanitarian common values. Regulated migrations on the origin, in the transit and in the destiny, and promote the sustainable development in the origin countries is the right way. It's the reason why Portugal is committed with the Pact for Migration of the United Nations and with the new Pact for Migration and Asylum of the European Union. This is the possible commitment between solidarity and responsibility. We are committed with the ambition of the reinforcement of the Frontex capacities to regulate the border movements, and we are integrated in common efforts, humanitarian efforts in the Mediterranean. Our great need is the enhancing of our common frame and network to promote the good integration in our cultures and societies. Coexistence is not the integration. Coexistence of different cultures is different of social and cultural integration. We can't forget the European represented almost 20% of the world population until 1950, and we will represent just 7% until 2050. We need the regulated migration to promote rejuvenation and to support the social and economic functions of the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is...
Distinguished Chair, dear colleagues, considering that Croatia manages the longest external land border and is situated on the active Western Balkans migratory route, we are focused on the protection of the EU external border. Croatian border is guarded by 6,700 border police officers and several thousand riot police officers, which is 5 times the number of officers Frontex has. Although a certain decrease in pressure on the Western Balkan route was recorded in 2024, which is certainly positive, the unfavorable situation in the Western Balkan countries regarding illegal migration still has a direct impact on the Croatian border. Following targeted operational measures by Serbia at its border with Hungary, the pressure of the Serbian-Hungarian border has been reduced by as much as 99%, but it has been redirected through Bosnia and Herzegovina. This clearly indicates that significant efforts are needed to control illegal crossings from Serbia into Bosnia and Herzegovina. The EU and Serbia recently signed the so-called status agreement between Frontex and Serbia, which we hope will enable the deployment of Frontex standing corps officers at critical points on the border between Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. By 25th July 24, the Croatian police prevented over 69,726 illegal migrants from entry, which is an increase of 38 compared to 23. 80% of them applied for asylum, with the majority being citizens from Syria, Turkey, Russia and Afghanistan. In addition, I would like to emphasize that 40% of the migrants in Croatia previously arrived in the Western Balkans region under visa-free regimes of Bosnia and Serbia, where the migrants arrive in a tourist-like fashion by planes and continue their journey by trying to cross the border illegally. This indicates that aligning the visa policies of the Western Balkan countries with the European Union visa policy is of utmost importance, and Croatia has been strongly advocating it.
Sorry.
The mic was switched off.
Daridis from Greek.
Thank you very much, dear hosts, dear colleagues. In the volatile world we live in, Greece, as a country responsible for the protection of its own borders, as well as the borders of the European Union, continues to underline that migration cannot be and should not be considered as a national issue. Thus, frontline member states should not bear a disproportionate burden and need to feel, especially in times of crisis, the security of their partners' mandatory solidarity, either as individuals or in financial resources. This disproportionate burden is vividly reflected in numbers. Since 2015, the heroic Greek Coast Guard has rescued more than 240,000 migrants in search and rescue incidents. The pressing situation on the Eastern Mediterranean migratory route, where in the first 7 months of 2024 there was an increase of 2,962% in migratory flows, only in Crete, from eastern Libya. In addition to the thousands coming from Turkey, we consider that it requires an intensification of actions through a triple approach. Firstly, we need a better analysis of the root causes of illegal migration in order to ensure a targeted prevention. Secondly, we need a more effective external border surveillance combined with encouragement of returns to the countries of origin of those who are not entitled to asylum. And thirdly, the creation or broadening of the legal pathways for labor mobility and migration to fill the labor market gaps of European economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Pierre Romain Thionni from Espagne.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, vous l'avez rappelé en introduction, la protection des frontières extérieures est prévue par le Code Schengen.
You've mentioned how important it is to protect the external borders, and the Schengen Codex it's under that control. The Hungarian migration policy in this regard cannot form any exception. It must just be part of the European normality. Olaf Scholz yesterday announced, Chancellor of Germany announced that from that point on, illegal migrants will be sent back to the border, at the border, and so they use a very severe migration policy. And it's good news that Europe finally is closing the borders where it's needed, and it's very good to preserve the cohesion of our societies and to protect our security. And this is the right response to the Eastern threats, and it's a right way to do, because not controlled borders that are the ones that lead to tragedies on the Mediterranean Sea, but it's the shortcoming of the right policies that cause those tragedies. Therefore, the European Union's regulations, the Frontex regulations, must be amended, must be modified, and those must be sent who are trying to come illegally on a sea route. So this is how we can protect our sovereignty.
Mr. Thionni from European Parliament. The next speaker is Loïc Hervé from France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues.
Thank you very much, dear Chair and dear colleagues. This morning, we had these discussions this morning only show what a challenge migration is for all of us. We are under migration pressure, and people expect results from us. We can be humane and humanitarians, but let's just see what happened in the Manche Channel, or what happened on the Mediterranean Sea. We can't turn a blind eye to that. We must have a stronger control on all external borders of the European Union. The migration pressure burdens all of Europe, and as a response, we have accepted the migration and asylum application, which is a success. Yet we must be tackling stronger the problem of human smuggling, and the Frontex and the national police, the cooperation sometimes cause tension, because we don't know what happened in the border of Bulgaria. Mr. von der Leyen would like to have more border control. The budget is large, yet it's not attractive enough. That agency is not attractive enough. Rather high-tech and modern equipment are needed, and we can see that there's just a tremendous work that's ahead of us. Thank you very much.
From Portuguese, Paulo Pisco.
Thank you, Chairman. The management of migration flows are one of the most complex challenges of our times. But we must not make any concessions to populisms and security policies where empathy and respect for human dignity are absent, as we have seen in that horrible video that has been shown to us for internal propaganda, as it has been the practice of Hungarian authorities in dealing with migration. I've been in Roscoe, the detention center, and I've known about what I'm talking about, and I also learned that one thing is the reality and the other thing is what Hungarian authorities say. Human rights, humanism, solidarity are in the base of our common identity, built since the beginning of this beautiful project that is the European Union. Therefore, it's so fundamental to defend our external borders and fight smugglers and to create legal pathways for migration as to defend our common values. If we don't do it, we'll be destroying our identity and the true nature of the European Union. In this context, I would like to ask to the Hungarian presidency, what do you mean when you say that you are going to find innovative solutions for rules on asylum, and if they will respect human rights and human dignity? And once Hungary only admitted 45 requests of asylum in 2023, the lowest number in the European Union, how will the country show its solidarity towards all other member states of the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Alekos Trifonidis from Cyprus.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, illegal migration is a European challenge that must be met with a European solution. Regarding Cyprus, it should be highlighted that over the past 7 years, my country has consistently been the member state with the highest number of applications for international protection in relation to its population. As we speak, the proportion of applicants and beneficiaries for international protection in Cyprus corresponds to 5% of the country's population. There is no doubt that this situation is caused by Turkey's provocative practice of instrumentalization of migration. Herds of evidence prove that the vast majority of irregular migrants to Cyprus come from sub-Saharan countries following a specific route, fly from their countries of origin to Istanbul, then to Timbu airport in the occupied by Turkey area of Cyprus, from where smugglers transfer them from the Green Line to the free areas, which are under the effective control of the Republic of Cyprus. Therefore, we should focus on practical solutions and strict measures. At the point we call for the EU consider to reevaluation of the situation in Syria to enable the voluntary return to Syrian refugees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Andronius Azubalis from Lithuania.
Dear colleagues, first of all, the Pact on Migration and Asylum, which entered into force this year, in my opinion, is already outdated. Because this legal act already foresees the corresponding numbers of migrants and for member states introduces a flavored obligation, accept certain number of migrants or pay. I think here we have a problem with our sovereignty, with our will of our citizens. And the last remark, we should also discuss about Frontex future. I don't know what this organization is doing, actually. The budget is a huge one, but in most cases, this organization acts as a simply observers, or in the best case, as a rescue organization. But it's nothing has to do with the security of our EU borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Aylem Ertuğrul from Turkey.
Dear participants, due to its geopolitical position, Turkey has been a bridge between underdeveloped countries and wealthy Western nations, and this has led irregular migrants to use Turkey as a transit route. The increasing migration also jeopardizes border security. Along with illegal migration, there has been a rise in drug and arms trafficking and terrorist infiltration, as well as other elements that could threaten national security. Although we have taken serious measures in recent years to enhance our border security, the increase in irregular migration has been greater. However, border security or prevention of illegal migration cannot be ensured solely through the physical and military measures taken by a single country along its border. The key lies in cooperation and burden sharing with the country from which migration originates. Dear participants, it must be acknowledged that Turkey is the country hosting the largest number of migrants and refugees in the European region. Turkey spends a substantial amount of resources on healthcare, education, nutrition, accommodation for these migrants. Turkey has shown great efforts on preventing the loss of lives of refugees in the Aegean Sea. But Greece is pushing back refugees to Aegean Sea and causing great amounts of life losses in the Aegean region. It must be known that these facts are clear by eyewitnesses and video recordings. In light of this unsustainable situation, I believe that Turkey should receive more economic support from the European Union for these services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Darko Jovanovic from Serbia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues. Ever since the first wave of illegal migration from the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, and the appearance of the Western Balkans route, the Republic of Serbia has been actively involved in all processes aimed at preventing mass illegal crossings of its own borders and those of neighboring countries, especially EU members. The result of those activities are truly impressive. In the first half of 2024, the number of illegal crossings at the EU's internal borders was reduced by 1/3. Hence, the Republic of Serbia assessment by the EU as a highly reliable partner. However, it's also necessary to emphasize that there is no effective control of the state border of the Republic of Serbia with the Republic of North Macedonia and the Republic of Albania in the territory of the southern Serbian province of Kosovo and Metohija, which, according to the UN Security Council Resolution 1244, is under the administration and supervision of international forces, KFOR and ULEX. Therefore, the Republic of Serbia deploys its military and police force in the specified safety ground zone on the administrative line with Kosovo and Metohija in order to prevent illegal migration flow to the EU and protect the EU from other forms of criminal activity as well. In these matters, as in all others, there must be respect for the internationally recognized and defined borders and territorial integrity of the Republic of Serbia, which includes the southern province of Kosovo and Metohija. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mustafa Kambey from Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fight against illegal migration, irregular border crossing, and the smuggling of migrants has become one of the most important issues on the agenda of almost all states and international organizations. In order to address the root causes of the migration influx, it is necessary to develop a disciplinary and humanitarian approach and establish coordination mechanisms. Ensuring peace, stability, prosperity, and sustainable development in the country of origin and providing humanitarian and developmental assistance in a coordinated manner are essential. Burden and responsibility sharing with the countries most affected by irregular migratory movement is crucial. Due to political instability, poor governance, poverty, armed and ethnic conflicts, and economic difficulties in the region, Turkey has long been under severe migratory pressure. As the pressure increases day by day, Turkey has not had the capacity to absorb and further influx of migrants. Turkey is open any kind of cooperation in the field of managing irregular migration and combating smuggling of migrants. Regarding Syrian migrants, we continue our efforts to create, educate, and sustainable conditions on the ground to ensure voluntary returns in a safe and dignified manner. We expect the EU to work with us, especially finding infrastructure projects, creating employment opportunities through small-scale projects, and providing cost allowance for returns.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Tom Weidig from Luxembourg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, to protect our borders, we can put fences, do pushbacks, give Frontex more money and power. But all these measures are only fighting symptoms. The most effective border control is to remove any incentive for people to come to Europe, either for economic gains, including benefiting from our welfare system or engaging in criminal activities. For far too long, some countries, mostly from Western Europe, made Europe look like a honeypot and soft on crime. Some of these countries, such as Sweden, Denmark, and also the Netherlands, have learned from their mistakes, or rather those politicians responsible have been voted out of power. As a consequence, numbers have dramatically decreased. For effective border control, we must restrict the benefits to asylum seekers to in-kind benefits. We cannot host them in better accommodation than our own citizens in need. We need to accelerate the asylum procedure. We must deny asylum to those committing crimes and convict and deport them fast. All these measures will remove the incentives for economic and criminal migrants, and we must communicate them loudly and clearly. Only the true refugees will still come, as they seek different things. They seek safety, stability, and our protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Rainer Semmet from Germany.
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, illegal migration for 10 years now has been a serious problem at EU level. It's a problem that is being exacerbated. This leads to a loss in trust in institutions, and this also strengthens extremist parties that tap into this potential and address this issue proactively. But we also have to admit that it's becoming more and more difficult, and that is applicable to Germany. It's more and more difficult to actually integrate this into society. So we are losing touch with society. What we need is a quick implementation of reforms. We can only act together. Individually, we cannot achieve headway. Now, what are the alternatives? A state of emergency rules that would actually mean that EU provisions are no longer applicable. We need internal controls. Germany just introduced them for the reasons that I mentioned before, because migration has skyrocketed over the past few months. Illegal migration that has nothing to do with asylum has increased, unfortunately. So we're going to implement this for 6 months, and then we'll see what happens. So member states need to cooperate more closely. A list of those that have been pushed back or pushing people back instead of triggering new procedures. A third country, third state model would also be worthwhile. Now, we're not against migration, but we should not lose control over migration, because if we do that, we'll run into major problems. Thank you.
From Suomi, Anne Kalmari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finland has 1,300 kilometers common border with Russia. Finland has taken part of the national agreements of human rights and European rules. That's crystal clear. Still, we had to close our border from Russia. The Russia sends people over the border as a part of the hybrid attack against Finland. This is organized by smugglers, like, for example, in Hungary. It's not the same than receive normal asylum seekers. We had to react against hybrid attacks. I ask for your understanding. I also call for joint actions at all our European external borders. Dear colleagues, when I was young, I was afraid to wake up my father because 1 second he was ready to take a rifle and defend Finland's border. His 3 brothers died in the war, and the father got eternal traumas. The war against the Soviet Union demanded expensive ransom, but we won our independence alone. Dear colleagues from every country, now Europe must be united and no one can be left alone again to defend the external border, not even in the case of hybrid war or illegal smugglers.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Dagmar Belakovic from Österreich.
Thank you very much. My thanks, first of all, go to Hungary. Thank you for taking external border protection seriously. Thanks for doing what all countries should do. They should protect external borders. Asylum procedures, implementing them outside the EU, well, that is something that we are very much in support of. Austria was exposed to migratory pressure for a long time. The Migration Pact was a desperate attempt by the EU to distribute refugees. But we actually need to put a stop to migration rather than just administering the problem. We'll need to close external borders so as to nip illegal migration in the bud. Otherwise, we are losing, or we would be losing our own population. Protecting our own people, that has to come first. There is great migratory pressure, and this has resulted in terror. This has led to violence. There has been a tilt. We've reached the tipping point, and we're losing sight of those that really need protection. And that's why, to protect our citizens, we need to put an end to all of these procedures. We need to close our external borders. There need to be pushbacks. There need to be fences, proper fences. There needs to be an infrastructure, and we need a large number of returns, actual returns. And that doesn't just apply to individual EU member countries. We need to take common action, because migrants can't stay in a single country because they will keep on moving. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Anna Pic from France.
Merci. La semaine dernière, encore, une embarcation.
So it's unfortunately migrants are coming. So if these are this is a very great responsibility. The criminal organizations that bring these illegal people to Europe, these people, both including men and women, and quite often children, they are actually refugees. They are escaping poverty, crises, and climate crisis, and all of these procedures force them to leave. Fences will not stop them. We must have a humanitarian response that also respects asylum and human rights. So we must tackle the problem. Well, we can't throw these people back without having just trusting autocrats. In several European countries, there is a demographic problem which is actually questioning the whole social and economic system. This represents a big challenge. So we must accept a strategy that responds to all of these challenges.
From Ireland.
Dear friends, a lot of talk about borders, border protection. You can build the walls as high as you like. You can do anything you want. The only thing you'll do by building walls and borders is you will have more violence, like what we saw in the video a little time ago. I agree with my colleague from Latvia. We must put in the root cause, treat the root cause and keep them in their homes. The Dublin Accord. Will somebody explain to me how a little island like Ireland in the northwest part of Europe, with no land border anywhere in Europe, finishes up with 20,000 applicants for migration? How does that happen? Is the Dublin Accord dead? Should we finally say there is no Dublin Accord? I have tremendous sympathy for my colleagues who live along the Mediterranean. I've gone out there at the request of the Italian government to see the trouble they have, and my sympathies are with them. Treat the root cause, and you may start to solve the migration problem, but unless you do that, all we're going to see is higher walls and more violence and more people struggling to get into the Europe that we love. So let's try and work together towards finding a solution to the root cause. And the talk of borders, I'm horrified. A European, I thought that Europe was to be open for all of us. But clearly, we've got to protect the borders. We are the authors of our own problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Retwari, you can answer for the questions, problems, and so on. Please come here for the
Tisztelt elnök úr, tisztelt hölgyeim és uraim!
Dear Chair, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the interveners. From all across Europe, we have delegates here, and we could get to know their point of view, their stances. It's probably not the first and definitely not the last time, and so we will keep discussing these issues. We are faced with a problem in terms of illegal migration that has been with us for more than a decade. And but the 2015, that was a big surge, big wave, and almost a decade has passed ever since. And there was only one person, one country, one institution, one political party. None of them, nobody mentioned that in the course of this past decade, we have solved the problem. Nobody said that this problem has ceased being. Nobody said that we have found the right way and this is the right way to go. However, a decade has passed, and after a decade having passed, we are still raising the same questions. We are still talking about this problem the way we did in 2015. It shows, to me, that this problem has not been solved. It is as prevalent as it was in 2015, and it also means to me, of course, you can all have your own meanings, your opinions, but to me, it means that the European Union has not found the right direction. Had the European Union found the right direction, most of you would have just like, yeah, keep continuing, just move on this direction, but that was not the case. However, this defines our everydays. It is a hot topic in every country. This is a priority topic, illegal migration in every country. However, we had a decade, 10 years to move into the solution. It was rather surprisingly positive for me how many of you spoke about the importance of the protection of the external border. How many of you, actually the majority of you, pointed out how important it is to protect the external borders, even from countries that were rather surprising to me. And as one of the state secretaries of the Hungarian government, I say that those who are representing the people, who were elected by the people, by the citizens, even in the parliament, they also say that the external borders must be protected. But who is punishing Hungary? Who's fining Hungary with 200 million euros when that's not the unanimous opinion of the states? I think we are captured by Brussels bureaucrats, and against their will, they use the European Union institutions. Solidarity was an important point. We must show solidarity towards each other. We are very serious about that, as well as the other European Union countries. This solidarity, we think, must also be shown in the way that when we protect the external borders, that we get help, or at least we are not blocked in doing so. We must also help countries that have coasts, that are sea coasts. So that is equally important for us to help them as as it is that we or the Bulgarians or that the Greek get the land border protection, the assistance to that. So we must work together. Solidarity is not only to distribute the illegal migrants who are here, but first of all, to protect all our external borders. I fully agree with those who say that the root causes must be solved. I only want to add that as long as we cannot solve the root causes, as long as in Africa or in Middle East there will not be a living standard as in the European Union, what are we going to do that? Because I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Hungary helps. We have a program. It's called Hungary Helps. Yeah, we hope it's going to help, but as long as the standard of living in Africa will not be as the one in Austria, what can we do? We must protect our external borders. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I invited you to the border to see that it works. For almost a decade, it has worked because it can keep illegal migration back, because we were told that the numbers will not change, but they have changed. Just see how the West Balkan migratory pathway has changed. That's partly because of the Hungarian border fence. That is indeed stops them or slows it down. Or just look at Serbia. When Serbia increased the control at the North Macedonian borders, we Hungarians are present, the Austrians are present, partly they build a fence. How the migration pathways have changed. Building fence does indeed have an impact on illegal migration. It does curb it. It's an actually functioning model. In terms of Frontex, some of you said that we've spent a lot of money on Frontex. Yeah, indeed. I think it's more about the human rights of human rights of the migrants is what they're concentrating or focusing on. We must also tackle the organized crime. They're present in Bulgaria and Serbia and Hungary and Austria and in Germany. They're omnipresent on the whole migratory route. This is actually one of the best businesses in the crime, drug sale and prostitution. Along these, this is probably the biggest income for the criminals, and whatever they earn, they also spend on attacks, on explosionary attacks, etc. And the money they use for that comes from illegal migration. In billions of euros is what they yield is from what they earn, what the criminals earn from illegal migration. Instrumentalization, I fully agree with those of you, there were quite a few of you, who said that we cannot tolerate to instrumentalize or use for political the migrants, that the migration would be used for political purposes. If we would jointly protect the external borders, such actions could not be carried out. If this would be the European approach, that external borders could only be crossed legally, this would not have any foundation. That's why we absolutely show solidarity to these countries. I want to tell my Romanian and Bulgarian friends that we Hungarians, as the holding of the presidency of Hungary, we want the Schengen issue on the agenda. It's very important, and Hungary has been stating this from the beginning. We must differentiate the real refugee and the illegal migrant. We must differentiate if it comes from an actual problem, a real problem from the neighboring country, or from a distant country paying thousands of euros to come here with the help of human smugglers. These are two different things and must be tackled, two different things. Those who come from a direct danger must be helped, but we cannot accept that someone comes from a distant country as an economic refugee, that they have a better life here, and even without any work, they want to have a better life and they want to live illegally. We cannot accept that. So we must differentiate it. That is absolutely crucial to solve this problem. Thank you very much indeed, all of you. And it was only confirming. So of course I did sense that the opinions differ in some cases. Thank you very much for being so honest. I think 1.5 minutes is just enhances As you can't describe, you can't explain. You must get to the root. Must get to the point, and so that's what we Hungarians like. So we were very happy to see that. We have some quotes, for example, that controlled borders have not caused any tragedy, but the uncontrolled borders cause tragedy every day. Thank you very much for having listened to me. Thank you indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Ritvari. Dear delegates, I would like to thank the activities. Now there will be a lunch break. The lunch will be at the Danube corridor next to the hall, and we are going to follow the program 1:30. Oh, sorry, not okay, 1 o'clock. So we are going to follow 1 o'clock the program.
We would like to start our last session. As I told you yesterday in the evening, the sunshine has arrived to Budapest. Hopefully you will be able to enjoy some of it in the afternoon. Our last session, session number 4, geopolitical strategic shifts in the world. Dear colleagues, it is fashionable to talk about the world moving towards multipolarity, and the main dilemma is whether to support or oppose this process, or simply adapt to it. To start the debate, let me share my opinion that this framing of the dilemma is completely misleading. Since 1945, the permanent members of the UN Security Council have always been forced to negotiate with each other, and China and the Soviet Union, then Russia, have never formed a common pole with the Western powers, not to speak about the differences between the Western powers themselves. Therefore, the world order will not be multipolar from now on, but has always been so. The dilemmas do not arise from this, in my opinion. Rather, they arise from the fact that the UN world order has been based on a system of values of the UN Charter, whose most important values were peace and security, the sovereign equality of nations, human rights, and the global common good. Here and there, this system of values has always received minor or major slaps, but it has never been blown in the head as much as with the Russian aggression, committed and still happening against the Ukraine. But this war hopefully will end, and hopefully sooner rather than later. And then the world will be faced with the dilemma of whether the aggressor can remain an equal member of the club of great powers that run the world, which is now called the permanent members of the UN Security Council, or will be excluded by the rest of the permanent members. This is a dilemma because either of the two will happen. It will fundamentally undermine, in each case, the UN world order. According to the UN Charter, Russia can only be excluded from the permanent members of the Security Council by its own consent. Its exclusion can therefore only happen if a new club of great powers is created. This would essentially mean a revolution against the UN world order. If, on the other hand, everything continues after the aggression against Ukraine, as if nothing has happened, then the value system of the UN will lose its remaining credibility, and therefore the world order will also be shaken. This is my big dilemma. How can the UN world order be saved? And at what price? Should it be saved at all? How can the stability of the world be maintained still? What should the EU's strategy be in relation to all this? Or the OSCE? I am not under the illusion that we will fully answer these questions in the next 2 hours. However, I'm confident that we cannot avoid to make progress in the interparliamentary dialogue and cooperation on this very, very sensitive problem. Dear colleagues, we have got 3 speakers to start our discussion this afternoon. And I would like to give first the floor to Péter Sztáray, State Secretary for Security Policy, Energy Security from the Hungarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Welcome, Mr. State Secretary. We are very honored that you have accepted our invitation. And I would like to ask you and the other 2 speakers as well to come to the podium here in front of me. Peter, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests here in Budapest, it's a privilege and honor to speak to you on the occasion of this very important conference. I was here yesterday and followed with very close attention the questions, the remarks, and of course the interventions. And I draw the conclusion that I should not speak about the Hungarian priorities of the presidency because you have heard enough about that. Maybe just touch upon it a little bit. I would like to speak about how we imagine the problems today, how we assess what's happening, and what kind of different methodology we would need to be able to give the real answers to the real problems and the real challenges. And in that respect, of course, national parliaments have a pivotal role because you are controlling your governments. Through that, you are controlling the Council. And in shaping EU policies, I think the role of national parliaments has to be preserved for the future. We are in the middle of the Hungarian presidency, and as you heard, we chose the priorities for this presidency based on 2 principles. One was that it should be of interest to Hungary, so we chose relevant issues which are important for us, but we chose them in a way that we made it possible for all the other member states to join, because we think that they are of interest to everybody. So from CSDP to competitiveness and other subjects, I think they are all very, very important subjects for the member states. And we are ready to facilitate further discussions and decisions during the remaining part of this year. Now, today's subject is the geopolitical and strategic shift. It is a very trendy subject, of course. From a Hungarian point of view, again, for us the question is how we can contribute to strengthening the EU while at the same time preserving the present level of integration. Second, preserving the institutional balance within the Union. And third, preserving the sovereignty of the member states. And we are trying to find the solutions based on these 3 preconditions. Of course, there is constant change, and in the past decade we have detected that there is also a generational change now from a bipolar world towards a multipolar world, as it was mentioned also by the chairman and others. And the answer to this shift is that the EU has to adapt. The question is, how can the EU best adapt to this new situation? And what are the major challenges? The major challenges are, of course, very well known to everybody, but just to quote them, a couple of them I picked up to demonstrate how serious the change is and how serious the challenge is towards the European Union. From 2015, we had a very visible mass migration, illegal migration towards Europe, and we are still struggling with that, the impacts of that, and we are still trying to find common solutions to tackle that situation. Then we had the COVID pandemic, which was not a political issue, but it became to some extent political, and it was a real challenge on the member states and also on the institutions. We have climate change, which is a long-term challenge, but it has lots of sub-challenges emanating from the climate change itself, and far-reaching consequences, of course. And then we had several economic crises. We had 2008, then we had the one with regard to COVID, then the one with regard to the Russia-Ukraine war. So there's a constant renewal of our economies, and we have to find constantly new answers to these problems in the economy. We should not forget about the war in Ukraine, Russia's aggression against a country neighboring my country, by the way, which is, again, a generational challenge, how we can handle this situation, what role the EU should find in this big crisis in our neighborhood. And the war had other implications on us, like the food chain crisis, the energy supply crisis. And these all together form a big basket of challenges, and I think we have not yet found the good answers, the right answers to these problems. And there's also the terror attacks, both outside Europe and inside Europe. There is arms trafficking, there's trafficking in persons and drugs. And these also add to the complexity of this world of challenges and constant change. And then I should quote the war in Israel, the terror attacks against Israel, and the ongoing military operations by the Israeli army, the high amount of civilian casualties, the humanitarian crisis, and the impacts of the Middle East conflict on Europe, which is quite direct. So what are the consequences? There's an accumulated impact of all these challenges on Europe and also on the wider Euro-Atlantic area. And my reading of all this is that Europe is losing weight and global influence. And there's a shift towards Asia. And Europe has also challenges with preserving its original identity and its immune system, which is gradually weakening in this big complexity of challenges. Now, China is on the rise as a world power, and the EU has to clarify its position and its interests, how it would tackle the emergence of China. And the systemic rivalry between the US and China, and in my interpretation, there is no final answer by the European Union how we should position ourselves in this big rivalry between the two great powers. There's also a demographic explosion in Africa, especially, which has a direct impact on Europe's security and Europe's future, because there are constant new waves and masses of illegal migrants. And although the EU has made some decisions in that respect, we still need some answers to tackle the situation better and to find a common interest and common solutions for all the 27 member states. And I think we are not yet there. There's also a spread of terrorism, as I said, inside Europe, outside Europe, affecting our security. And internal security in the European Union is deteriorating too. So what can we do? My suggestion is that we should change some parts of our methodology, how we shape and how we make decisions. We need to strengthen the European Union's resilience, on the one hand, and we need to strengthen the European Union's tools to exercise influence in the world. We speak about a global Europe, but if we want to have a global Europe which is influential, then we need a different type of approach. What is that? I think we need to widen the scope of frank, rational, down-to-the-earth debates. Sometimes one has the impression that in the Council or in different fora in the European Union, we are avoiding these frank discussions. And discussions and exchanges are more formal, sometimes hypocritical, and over-politicized. So what we need to do is to be able to address the real challenges. There we need, there we need a real language. We don't have to be always politically correct, but we have to address the real problem with the real words at face value. That is kind of more realpolitik and less ideology approach. So we need very frank exchanges and out-of-the-box thinking and avoiding cliches. And thus we will be able to identify the real problems and the real common interests, because that is also missing sometimes. And to find the real tools to address the challenges. For us, the unity of the European Union is very important. It must be maintained and strengthened. But let's not forget that unity is built by incorporating all the positions of the different member states. That also means that minority positions are legitimate. If someone has a minority position that's a legitimate position, we have to discuss it and try to find the common ground between the different positions. And we need more consensus building without criticizing each other, but trying to find a common ground, as I said. Because of that, moving away from a consensus-based decision-making system, it may sound a good idea, but it would weaken the unity of the Union. It would weaken our unity politically, and it would weaken the implementation of our decisions. So because of that, I would be very cautious with moving towards QMV, qualified majority voting, because of that very reason. There's an example, NATO. You have a consensus-based decision-making. It's very difficult to get to consensus. It's cumbersome, it takes time. But when you are there, then you have a very strong common political position, and you have a very strong implementation. And I think that's what we need in the EU. That's why, especially smaller countries, should be cautious with the discussion about QMV. Yes. When I spoke about the legitimacy of the minority positions, let's not forget the 2015 migrant crisis, when about 500,000 people walked through Hungary towards Western Europe. And there were very, very harsh political discussions about how we should tackle that situation. Hungary said that we have to protect the external Schengen border. We have to decide outside the border who is eligible for political asylum and who is a migrant or economic migrant, whatever status. And we have to bring help there where the problem is and not bring the problem here into the heart of Europe. But this position was a very much a minority position, and we were so much criticized. And if you look at the mainstream position now in Europe on migration, illegal migration, then I think that's very close to the Hungarian position, actually. The mainstream position is that we have to protect the borders, and we have to decide outside the EU who is eligible for a status inside. And if someone doesn't have the right to enter or to stay, then it has to be stopped or brought back to its country of origin. So it is possible to find common ground. We just need the time and the political will to unite our positions into one single position, and then we will be strong. So unanimity, in a way, is a safeguard for us to maintain the unity of Europe. And if we want to keep everybody on board and effective implementation, then we need this type of approach. Now, what should we do to increase the role of the European Union? First, I think we must concentrate on competitiveness, which there was a lot of talk about it yesterday. It's one of the major priorities of our presidency. Without better competitiveness, the EU will further lose its global position and its global weight in this big new arrangement of multiple polarity. We must build more connectivity with third parties, and these connections should be based on equality and mutual respect. Sometimes one has the impression that we are criticizing and sanctioning our partners all the time in the world. It's a kind of copying the US democracy export. This is not for Europe. Europe needs strong partners, and the relationships have to be built on an equal basis on mutual respect. Because we cannot afford closing the communication channels with anyone if you want to remain or become again a relevant player with a significant weight globally. We need to find real solutions to stop illegal migration and terrorism in Europe, and we must make Europe's streets safe again. We must make steps to convince the warring parties in our neighborhood on the necessity of starting some kind of talks for a possible ceasefire before it goes too far, before a generation of Ukrainians die and the whole country will be destroyed. This is an untenable situation. We need the great powers. Hungary is small for that, but we need the great powers to engage, because otherwise we will not get closer to peace, and we want to restore peace. And we must accelerate enlargement to extend the internal market, to strengthen our economies, and to stabilize our neighborhood. That is also very important. And the Western Balkans, in that respect, has come a very long way in the past 20 years. So we must reward their efforts before it's too late, before others fill the vacuum. And finally, we must strengthen our military capabilities. That's why CSDP is one of the priorities of the Hungarian presidency. We need more strategic autonomy, although we need NATO, because Europe in itself is not able to defend itself or to create sufficient deterrence against any kind of threat coming from any direction. Because of that, we need NATO in the foreseeable future, but we need more European strategic autonomy, because there may be situations where NATO as such or the US is not interested in tackling a problem, like, for example, monitoring the Mediterranean, bringing help to the Maghreb countries, whatever. So we need European defense, we need European defense industry, and Hungary is a partner in that endeavor. So I apologize for talking too much, maybe, and going so much in details, but I think these are questions which are relevant to all of us, and where it's worth rethinking some kind of, sometimes the methods and the way how we approach concrete problems, and maybe we will be in a position that we will be able to find better solutions for these common challenges that are affecting all of us. So thank you once again for your attention. I know it was difficult after lunch. Wish you further good deliberations and enjoy Budapest. Thank you.
Thank you, State Secretary. And our next speaker is Mrs. Pia Kauma, the President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And you are the guarantee for gender balance among speakers. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear Mr. Chair, dear fellow parliamentarians, it is a great honor for me to join you today. I extend my sincere gratitude to our hosts and to all of you for inviting me to engage in this crucial discussion. We are meeting at a time of profound change and challenge. The global security environment is undergoing transformation, driven by new and complex threats, including cyber warfare, hybrid conflicts, and the resurgence of great power competition. These threats undermine regional stability and the rules-based international order. The most pressing issues we face is Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine. This is not a distinct conflict. It is a deadly war in the heart of Europe, a stark violation of international law, and a direct challenge to the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity that underpin both European security and the global order. The conflict in Ukraine has profound implications for our collective security, highlighting the importance of a robust response to aggression and supporting nations in their struggle to defend their sovereignty. In this context, dear Mr. Chair, I would like to emphasize the OSCE's distinctive role as an international organization compared to the European Union. Dear fellow parliamentarians, as you all remember, the OSCE was established almost 50 years ago on the very principle to bring together to the same table 57 participating states, many of which agreed that they disagree on certain issues. Therefore, the OSCE today can and it will provide a crucial platform for dialogue, enabling constructive conversations between countries, even in conflict, and facilitating peace negotiations. The OSCE possesses numerous instruments which are available to all participating states to contribute to stabilization and the strengthening of democratic governance and human rights. However, the effectiveness of these instruments depends on political will. Dear fellow politicians, it depends on us. In contrast, the EU possesses a range of soft power tools and financial incentives that can be more direct, impactful. The EU's binding obligations on its member states enable it to provide substantial financial aid, implement sanctions, and exert economic pressure. Today, both the European Union and the overwhelming majority of OSCE participating states share a common objective, which is to support Ukraine and to uphold its right to self-defense against Russia's aggression. Our cooperation is therefore vital in various areas, such as locating and repatriating children forcibly taken to Russia and aiding in rebuilding efforts. During my recent trip to Ukraine, I witnessed the resilience of the Ukrainian people, with rebuilding already underway in devastated cities like Irpin and Bucha. This underscores the urgent need to continued support as Ukrainians strive to live their lives amid ongoing conflict. Turning to the broader geopolitical context, the crisis in the Middle East also impacts European security. Similar forces are at play, and Russia benefits from the diversion of attention and resources to the Middle East, further complicating the global security landscape. Despite the gravity of the situation, we must not lose hope. Building peace requires trust and faith in the future, and it is the role of us politicians to foster this faith. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly remains committed to working collaboratively with all stakeholders to promote peace, stability, and security across the Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian regions. Dear Mr. Chair, fellow parliamentarians, let us seize this opportunity to engage constructively, to collaborate closely, and to take decisive action in addressing the pressing security challenges of our time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Mr. Nicolas Pascal de la Parte, member of the Subcommittee on Security and Defense of the European Parliament, who has spent the last 2 days with us, to take the floor. You have the floor.
Dear Chairman, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and an honor to be here today addressing you by invitation of the Hungarian presidency, and I feel myself very comfortable and happy to be here. As my predecessor speakers have already said, we are in a geopolitical change, but we should perhaps identify exactly what do we mean by that. Conceptually speaking, there are a lot of definitions that we are the West against the rest. We have a kind of multipolarity wall, a new imperialist wall. I would prefer perhaps to retain the concept of an asymmetric bipolar wall with two big powers, one established, the US, and the other one emerging, China. We are, therefore, in a period of transition, a transition from the post-Second World War order, from multilateral rules-based order, which is put into question by many players, but mainly by those who don't feel comfortable with this rule-based order. One is Putin's Russia, the other is China. Putin's Russia has decided to ignore and to violate severely the principles, the convictions of the UN Charter. International frontiers, the political independence of the state, the territorial integrity of Ukraine has been violated. And with that, Russia put itself outside of the international order. But Russia is not a normal country. Russia is one of the founders of the UN system after the Second World War. Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. Russia is the biggest nuclear power in the world. Russia has a veto right in the Security Council. What I mean by that by Russia putting into question, aggressing the international order, the whole of it is in tatters. It's not only the appalling consequences for the Ukrainian population, it's not only the devastating effect on the infrastructure, it's also the example that Russia is setting around the world. I am sure that there will be dozens of tyrants and autocrats looking whether by force you can change or whether or not you can change international frontiers. They are looking for whether or not by force you can march into a country to put a puppet state. They are looking whether or not by force you can change the order that was established decades ago. That's why the consequences of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, beyond the human suffering, will have political consequences for the decades to come. In addition to this, we have China, an emerging power with more assertive, because they think that they are coming back to the place where they should never have abandoned 200 years ago. They lost the Industrial Revolution, they lost 1 or 2 centuries, but now they say now is our time, and in 2049, 100 years after the Mao Zedong Communist Revolution, we'll be back as the first power of the world. This is the objective of the Chinese, to be the first power of the world in 2049. They have published. And for that, we have no time to go into this, we have now the clear, what is called by the scholars, the Thucydides dilemma. Thucydides dilemma, you know that there is an analyst in the Kennedy School in the US, Graham Hallison, who said that once you have established power and there is emerging power, normally this tension, this dialectic tension, out of 16 historical cases he studied in his essay, the Thucydides trap, of these 16 historical cases, 12 were solved by war, and only 4 by peace. One of these 4 is the German-French rivalry that brought about 3 wars, and after the Second World War, we set up the European Union, and it is an example of peace and how to sort out the problem peacefully. We are one of these 4 good examples, how to sort out differences, historical differences by negotiation. But in addition to this great power scheme and the transition from the rules-based multilateral order to something else we don't know yet, we have also the disruption of the new technologies. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, quantum computing, then the cloud, the Internet of Things, biotechnology, robotics, so on and so forth. And this, coupled with the access to these new disruptive technologies by non-state actors, makes the world very much a dangerous place. Because so far we're the states, the main actors of the conflicts and the negotiations of the peace. Nowadays, not anymore. There are terrorist organizations, there are some regime non-actors players who have access to these technologies and can multiply the impact on the international order. Well, this is the world we are facing in, and perhaps we could go further on this path later on. But with China, for instance, we have to be very careful because China is not the USSR. But the USSR was clear in the Cold War who were the good ones and the bad ones. Now, not any longer, because with China we have a very complex relationship. I mean, it is a necessary political associate for many things: the fight against climate change, the fight against terrorism, the fight against many worldwide menaces and risks. And then we need China. But at the same time, it's an impressive economic competitor. And at the same time, it's a systemic rival, as the European Commission said a couple of years ago. Then with China, we need a more complex relationship than we have now these days with the USSR. In addition to this, China is the main owner of reserves, of dollars reserves in the world. Well, what is the European Union response to this transition period in the international order? I feel that now we have come to terms with the reality. I think that the invasion of Ukraine by Russia was a shock and a wake-up call for all of us. And I think that the European Union has been somehow surprised by history. History is accelerating at such a pace that we have the risk of being overrun by events. Not to be as a world order shaper, but to receive the consequences of a world order that we are not shaping. And for that, we have to change to be a security consumer to a consummate security provider. If we want to be a rules maker and not only a rules taker. It's easy to say, but difficult to do in this world. First and foremost, we need a revision of our strategic document, which is the Strategic Compass of March 22. We have agreed that it was a document that was negotiated and was approved and sanctioned 1 month after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and didn't factor in this tectonic change in Europe and in the world. That's why we have to review the compact, because it was born out of date or death, if you want. And for that particular purpose, the European Commission has already announced the issuing of a white book on defense. I think it's a very good first step, a white book on defense, but I think that it will need to be declined in different strands of action in the next months and year to come. Our political commitment of our leaders was crystal clear in the Versailles Declaration, but again, things are evolving at such a pace that we have the risk to be overrun by events. So, we have been slow. We have to recognize this, to provide Ukraine with all the equipment and the armament it asked for. We have put ourselves restrictions. We have been lifting the restrictions one after the other, dragging sometimes our feet to recognize the reality that you cannot win a war only with defensive weapons and with a hand tied up to your back. I mean, it's like two football matches that you have to win a match without going to the other field, only playing in your own field, your half field. It is impossible. You want to win a match, you have to be allowed to make scores in the other team's field. We have to remove these restrictions. I think that we have made clear this idea. The first European Parliament's plenary statement was not about setting up institutions, especially the Commission, the new Commissioner for Defence, but we adopted by a large majority a statement of full support to Ukraine for as long as it needs and as long as it takes. This is a show of unity that we have to preserve. And when I say we have to preserve, it doesn't mean by that we cannot allow ourselves to go bilaterally around the world with different statements. Lessons from the war on Ukraine. I think that one of the main lessons is that it is necessary the public-private cooperation and collaboration. You remember that in the first stages of the war, the first weeks of the war, it was a private company, Starlink and Google, who prevented the Russians, surprised the Ukrainians with a landing at the airport. Months before the invasion, Starlink and other great digital platforms were collaborating already with the Ukrainian authorities to avoid that. Then the public cooperation nowadays is necessary in peace and in war. Second, we have another lesson that we can draw from the Ukraine conflict, is that we have to cobble together the right mix between conventional capabilities and new capabilities. It's true that we have to maintain the platforms that project force outside our frontiers, carriers, tanks, frigates, heavy artillery is necessary, of course, but at the same time we have to develop already the telecommunications and information technologies, the drones, the satellites, and all the new technological developments of artificial intelligence. But for that, we have to find the right mix. We have to invest in both chapters, in traditional capabilities and in new capabilities. Which is the right mix? Nobody knows. It depends on all of us. But we have to talk about this and to make clear that we have to go together here as well. And if we move southwards, because now we are surrounded by a ring of fire, a reef of crisis. This is a problem now that the European Union is surrounded by failed states, by conflicts and by wars, from the North Pole to the Sahel, to the North Africa. And that's why we have to be aware that our response has to be 360 degrees. We have recognized that in NATO, but we have also to be aware of that in the European Union. If we go to the Gaza conflict, one of the main lessons that we can draw is that despite of all the technical and technological advances of Israel, despite of all the applications of artificial intelligence to protecting its borders against invasions, the 7th of October last year happened. That means that artificial intelligence, new technologies are necessary, but are not enough. We need what is called cognitive dominion, the capability of sum up information, elaborate information, assume it and process it in a way that we could anticipate challenges and attacks. This cognitive dominion is the 6th dominion that has to be added to sea, to air, to land, to space, and to cyber. And that thing is one of the main lessons we can draw from the conflict in Gaza. Here again, but it demands another panel to shape the guidelines of the ethical use of artificial intelligence. I think it's something we Europeans should be at the avant-garde here. Artificial intelligence, the dual use of artificial intelligence for civilian and military purposes is of such importance that we cannot have this domain absolutely unregulated. And it's one of the main challenges we have to face. If we go southwards, another crisis surrounding the European Union, we have the Sahel. The Sahel, we have been swept away. We have to recognize that. The European Union and the member states, we have been chased away. From Mali, from Niger, we have 3 military operations there, civilian and military operations. Now we have none. And now it's Russia, and which is present there, and the Chinese. What happened there for us to be chased? That is something that we have to reflect upon. We have to rethink, to reset, and to rebuild our relationship with the Sahel countries, which is our southern frontier, the neighbors of the southern frontier, which threatens our stability and prosperity. We need a new approach. We need a new strategy that factor in the needs of these countries, and we have to listen to them first. We cannot make a strategy in Brussels and to go there to sell it out with the purpose of projecting stability. We don't project anything if they don't want to be projected. We have to listen to them very carefully, what they need. And probably what they don't need any longer is big military operations there on their soil, but more focus, sectoral focus, military and civilian operations that help them state build. At least we have now a strong political and institutional alignment in Europe we have come to the conclusion that the dividends of peace after the Second World War are over, and we have to invest in our own security and to be able to be a major partner to shape the new world order together with our American friends. The word then is deliver. We have to deliver to our citizens. And to deliver, we need money, funding. And it's another chapter that we have to touch upon. We have already approved the 10-year program for the European Defence Industrial Strategy. That has also come to a new instrument, which is the European Defence Industrial Program, the EDIP, that is granted with 1.5 billion euros. It's not enough. It's only an instrument, a bridging instrument, until the new cycle of the MF in 2027. But in addition to this, we have also to beef up the European Defence Fund. We have to look into the possibilities of issuing or not bond defense or defense bonds in the market, as we did for the consequences of the COVID. Something that is in the table and deserves to be discussed, even if somebody doesn't feel comfortable with that. We should also dwell on the possibility of VAT exemptions for joint programs, joint armament programs with European dimension. I mean, there are quite a number. We have perhaps to review the statute of the European Investment Fund. There should be no taboos here. We need money, we need a lot of money to have defense, common defense, and we have to explore the existing instruments and, if needed, to create new ones. Otherwise, we will not be credible. That's why the Commission has been asked to propose an option papers with a revision of all these instruments I have just mentioned. But again, the word is delivered to our citizens, and to be aware that we cannot do it alone. What do I mean by that? I said before that we need a collaboration between the public and private. But if we need the collaboration, especially in the new disruptive technologies, more than 85% of all the investment in these new technologies come from the private enterprises, not from the state. Something new in our history. For the last 5 centuries, it was the state, our state, which was deciding what kind of weapons they needed, what kind of factories we have to set up to create these weapons. Not any longer. We depend on the technology, on the technological breakthroughs of the private enterprise. And then we have to talk to them. In addition to this, most of our weapons and ammunition industries in Europe and the US are private, are not public. While in China and in Russia, these factories and enterprises are state-run and state-owned. That's why they can react more quickly than we do. Well, to finish, I will say that, well, the strong collaboration with NATO has been mentioned. I don't need to go into this. It means interoperability of our resources, military mobility, joint drills, staff-to-staff permanent consultations, and complementarity with NATO. Here, I think that we have to make clear to have a single set of capabilities that belong to the member states, whether in NATO or the European Union. Depending on the nature of the menace of the threat, we will decide to use these single national capabilities within NATO or within the European Union. But this is something that I want to make clear. The capabilities are national and are unique and will be devoted to one organization or other, depending on the threat. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, I wish to thank all 3 keynote speakers for their thought-provoking presentations. According to the preliminary registration, there are 20 requests for the floor. I close now the speaking list. The speaking time is 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds again. May I please ask you to respect this limitation? Participants are kindly asked to intervene from their allocated seats by standing up and by using the clip mic. The method of the contributions is the same. I will now give the floor to the first speaker on our list, Mr. Pierre Romain Tonnet from the European Parliament. The floor is yours.
Je crois que ça fonctionne. Merci, Monsieur le Président, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair, Madam Chair, State Secretary, distinguished colleagues, let me share a topic with you that we haven't spent enough time so far. And however, this has also got to do with geopolitics, and that's identity. Yves Lacoste, French scientist, found it very important that everybody's identity, everybody should stand up for themselves. So this is like in the 21st century, as power is connected to geopolitical challenges. It's not just an issue of quantity. It's not just adding up how many tanks and aircrafts we have, or natural resources, or patents, technological patents. No, power is being able to respond. Who are we? Why are we together? Why are we searching the solutions together? Is it because we are living on one continent? Yes, that's one answer. The other half of the answer is that we here together, our architecture, our literature, our songs all connect us, because these are parts of our cultural heritage, and that's the reason why we don't disappear in this ever-changing world. We must be proud of our identity, and we must pass it on to the next generations. We must preserve our identity. The imperialistic migration-related pressure, against that, we must preserve our identity.
From Poland.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we have already said a lot in this hall about security challenges facing our European community. Rules of discussion makes us to underline chosen. Today, the situation of young people on almost all continents in many countries of the world is similar, if only because of one desire that unites them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, huge, unprecedented numbers of young people have in common that they want to emigrate from their homelands. Due to the lack of the economic and educational prospects, due to the lack of civil rights and freedom, increasingly often also for reasons resulting from climate change, violent and dramatic atmospheric phenomena. There is one more thing that unites all, or at least most, of these young people. The promised land is United Europe, traditionally called the old continent, a name that is today more symbolic than ever. It seems to be a huge challenge for our community, but also for the world order we know from the past. As a country on the border of the European Union, we know, as do several other border countries, that this is an area where the future is changing into the present at an extremely fast pace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Brender Koloman, Hungary.
Dankeschön, Herr Präsident. Wir befinden uns in der Veränderung der globalen Weltordnung nach 1945.
There are many changes taking place in the world after 1945. This was also part of the changes that have taken place more recently as a consequence of Putin's attack against Russia. And I think we have to react to that rather quickly within the European Union and within the United Nations. It is totally unacceptable that the World Security Council still remains inactive, and we still have the same permanent members in the Security Council as was the case in 1945. It is totally unacceptable that the European Union, after the enlargement towards the east, and after the hopefully soon accession of the states of the Western Balkans, will be led as it is being ruled today. We need to strengthen the European Union. We need to provide it with military capabilities in the European Union in close coordination and cooperation with NATO. At least that's what I've learned from experience, and that's what I'm convinced of. And I would like to subscribe to what my colleague Toinel has said. We need to strengthen and preserve our identity. We need to strengthen our common European values. That's what we need to focus on. I would like to emphasize in particular that we need to preserve our regional identities, our languages. You might be taken by surprise, because in the Hungarian parliament, we are in a minority, but we prefer to speak that language in our parliament as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Speaker is
Dear colleagues, conflicts which change geopolitical image of Europe are not happening only on the borders of Europe, but they happen in the very heart of Europe, or they might happen on the Western Balkan countries, which have been destabilized by strategy of destabilization from Russian aggression. These things are done by Serbia, which is Putin's proxy. Such situation we are supporting and bring ourselves into a situation that we don't have a common European policy, because not implementing sanctions for Serbia towards Russia means that we don't have criteria which we should stick to. Have we given up because NATO sold aircrafts to allies of Putin, or because of the exploitation of lithium? That's a question for you all. Croatia wants in its neighborhood safe, rich, democratic, satisfied neighbors. For our own safety, we want to help the way we helped Montenegro and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Why? Because we want peace for all of us. If we don't have that, we will find ourselves in a situation where we have Chinese and Russian player in the very heart of Europe, and they will not look at the peaceful prosperity European way of life, protecting our European way of life. Let us think about that, please.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Dimitrios Kairidis, Hellas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ours is a period of transition, power transition, and periods of transition, we know this from Thucydides, are crisis-ridden and full of risks and dangers. We talk a lot, and we parliamentarians in particular, but I am afraid we don't do as much and as the era demands. Are we ready for a Trump and MAGA victory in United States election, possibly? I doubt it. We talk a lot about Europe's geostrategic autonomy. It was a big thing for Ursula von der Leyen's Commission when she took over in 2019, but the results, despite some progress, are not that encouraging. We should move forward towards a European common defense. We should spend more, and we should spend more together in a coordinated fashion. I think the Tusk Mitsotakis proposal for a joint air defense in Europe is a very good start, and the defense bonds, joint defense bonds for Europe to spend on defense capabilities in this very dangerous world we live in, also a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mrs. Liliana Reis from Portugal.
We have seen deep geopolitical and strategic transformations around the world. As all of us, I could map some of them, but as time don't allows me, just pointing to what is in Genesis and what is the main goal, power transition, as my Greek colleague said, and the new old order shaping. We are facing a lot of threats, like yesterday has been revealed here, from war to climate change, from cybercrime to disinformation and fake news spreading, from east to south. When we thought that the anarchy had been measured by international law, we realized that the power overcame the law. The return of power politics shows how important it is for us to consolidate our relations with our allies and rebuild our relations with partners who have gone away from us. European Union and each member state crossing multilateral and bilateral diplomacy should deepening strategic partnerships with other regional blocs. with the basis of the mutual respect, such as Mercosur, African Union, and India.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mrs. Dunja Simonovic-Pratic from Serbia.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear friends from Hungarian Parliament, dear Nemet, please let me show my gratitude for your support in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in respecting the territorial integrity of the Republic of Serbia. Your support meant a lot, not just for us who were there, but for whole Serbian people. In that extent, I want to congratulate your government and to your Prime Minister on the courage to start the mission for peace in Europe. Unfortunately, some European leaders and MPs saw it more as a provocation. That reaction speaks more about them and the double standards than about initiative itself. Due to that, I have a question for the distinguished State Secretary, Mr. Staraj. What do you think, will EU manage to achieve such a self-sufficiency with or without new member states, that it will really be able to decide its own fate and the fate of its citizens? And what is more important, who will win or who will be a peacemaker? What is bigger and what makes a difference? Thank you.
Thank you, Dunja. It was not me who wrote this speech. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Georgos Koukoumas from Cyprus.
Dear colleagues, the increasing armament across the globe is the most characteristic and most dangerous expression of the explosive rivalries that are shaking our world. Global military spending reached an all-time record in 2023, approaching $3.5 trillion. Even more worrying is the return of nuclear arsenals to the global agenda, which is a direct threat to the future of humanity. In addition, the use of artificial intelligence in the war industry raises questions not only about the future nature of warfare, but also about the future of the planet. And while all this is happening, the armed conflicts worldwide are increasing, growing, and becoming even bloodier. Increasing armament does not always provide security. On the contrary, more often it reproduces itself as a vicious circle of self-feeding tension reinforced by the interests of war industries. Faced with this, Europe should not base its future on the so-called war economy, but on peace, on international law, on a principled foreign policy, to take initiatives to end the war in Ukraine with a just, a fair peace agreement, to end the new war in Gaza, which is not a military operation, not even just a deadly conflict, but is an ongoing genocide by Israel against the Palestinian people, with more than 40,000 dead people, including 16,000 children. It is also necessary to stop the arms trade of EU member states to third countries that are guilty of serious violation of international law, such as Turkey, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. Ambitious objectives promoting peace would be, for example, to implement in practice the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and to promote the idea, which is shared by the European Parliament, of declaring the Middle East a zone free of weapons of mass destruction. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mr. Harald Troch, Austria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are talking about the new world order, about the future. And Peter Staraj said, Europe is losing weight. I'm happy that we talk about facts and we have to live with that. But Samuel Huntington, the very famous US-American political scientist, said this already in 1994. 30 years ago, he spoke in his Clash of Civilizations and the remaking of the world order. He spoke about the rise of China, the rise of Brazil, of India, and the Arab world. Now, Europe in the past was exporting Christianity. We forced Christianity on many peoples outside Europe. We exported the free market to many, many other peoples and states. we are exporting now democracy and the EU values. I think Europe should concentrate to export peace and not what we call values from religion to other points. So European defense, as you said, Koloman, is okay, but less interventions. And sometimes I feel this exporting, what we did in the past of ideologies, was a bit a marketing for colonialism. I appreciated that Mr. De La Parte spoke about we shouldn't complain so say, about China as a rival, but we should rethink our behavior towards other cultures, towards other countries, speaking concretely about the Sahel zone, where a lot of colonial mistakes were made, and they still play a role. And we should not complain so much about China, but we should invest here in Europe, in our technology, in our artificial intelligence, and not so much as a rival, as a systemic rival of
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Hulusi Akar, Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and dear colleagues. The international system and the global order have undergone profound changes, as you notice. Polarization between the various blocs is evident. The international and the global institutions, which serve only interests of some certain powers, are dysfunctional and unable to solve global problems, unfortunately. The ongoing ethnic cleansing, genocide, and the war crimes perpetrated by the Netanyahu government against the Palestinian people are evidence of this structure, this architecture. As the United Nations Security Council has become the protector of the Netanyahu cabinet, war cabinet, by vetoing the calls for ceasefire. The Netanyahu cabinet has massacred more than 40,000 innocent people, including more than 17,000 children. 17,000 children. The Netanyahu government is pushing the entire region and the world into abysses. The failure of the international community, ICJ, to stop Israel attacks has further emboldened Netanyahu government in their attempts. That is why our call for multilateralism under the motto, "The world is bigger than five." As Turkey, our priority is to deepen cooperation. A note for your attention, especially for our Greek colleagues. Turkey has fulfilled its obligations under the Turkey-EU Declaration on Migration. We have closed the Aegean route and saved lives. I have already mentioned the figures, so that you can check all of those the figures within the UNHCR. Turkey's humanitarian way of dealing with illegal immigration is a model for all countries. Unlike some countries, we do not deal with illegal immigration by burning and drowning migrants and the sinking migrant boats. We have not turned the Mediterranean Sea into a graveyard for migrants. We understand why some colleagues talk in delirium. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The machine was responsible. Next speaker is Nike Grupponi.
Thank you very much, Mr.
You have
Chairman.
the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, the importance of a global strategic and geopolitical changes compel us to reflect on just our approaches. The upcoming election in the United States and NATO's role demands strategic autonomy for the Union, even while sharing common goals and values. The European Union must strengthen its ability to act while also reinforcing its network alliance, particularly around NATO's central role, and privileged relationship with the United States. However, it must also pay attention to relations with the East, starting with China, which should be seen both a partner for cooperation and economic competitor, as well as a systematic rival. For this reason, it is essential to respect the timeless for the operational readiness of the European Rapid Invasion Force, without getting caught up in technical decision-making processes. If something like this had already been working, perhaps Minister Tajani would not have to request strengthening of the Aspides mission. We need to enhance common security and defense for better investment, share reasons preparing the Union for inevitable enlargement process, which however requires greater strength, cohesion, and the ability to support aspiring members, ensuring that integration is both gradual and genuine, yet beneficial. As an entrepreneur, allow me to spend a moment to highlight the importance for Union long-term competitiveness and increasing sovereignty in strategic sector and branding the gaps in growth, productive innovation with international partners and main competitors. A strong European economy is also more authoritative and secure Europe of the international stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Carlos Eduardo Reis, Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a change in global geopolitical balance, and one of the new epicenters of that transformation is the Arctic. What once appeared to be an isolated and icy region is emerging as one of the most important geostrategic battlefields of our time. The accelerated melting caused by climate change is opening up new opportunities, but also causing increasing tensions between nations, seeking to assert their control and explore the riches of this territory. Russia has already invested in Arctic militarization, rebuilding and modernizing former Soviet bases, and positioning equipment such as radars and air defense systems. However, Russia faced technical and financial challenges in the exploitation of the Arctic, and this is where an unexpected ally emerged, China. China will have the privileged access to the vast reserves of energy resources in the region and new trade routes such as the route of Polar Silk, accompanied of an ambitious Belt and Beijing route initiative. Given this scenario, Europe can stay on the sidelines. The European Union, along with the Nordic countries and Canada, must intensify its diplomatic and scientific presence in the region. It's essential to promote a multilateral approach to regulate Arctic activities and ensure that exploitation of the resources is done in respect for the environment. The future of the Arctic and the future of the planet are intertwined. It's up to us, as global community, that the exploitation of this region is done peacefully and sustainably for the sake of the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Roberto Bagnasco, Italy.
Grazie Presidente. I cambiamenti geopolitici.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The global geopolitical changes are rewriting the consolidated balances. And as we have already mentioned on multiple occasions, the Russian-Ukrainian war is also part of this picture. And it also has a grave impact on international order. This conflict has shown to what extent the balance is vulnerable in Europe and how vulnerable the relationships between the European Union, China and the US are. The sanctions against Russia and the military and humanitarian aid provided to Ukraine and the rearmament of multiple countries is rewriting defense dynamics in Europe. Parallel to that, China has an increasingly decisive role in the world. On the one hand, Beijing represents a dual position towards Ukraine and Russia, if we observe these issues officially. And on the other hand, China is disseminating its or extending its economic influence in multiple regions in the world, especially in Africa and Latin America, with initiatives that increase the technological, political, economic and military presence of the country in these regions. And this has to be taken into consideration from the aspect of long-term development. And the India-Pacific region is also a new area from the aspect of Chinese interests. Rivalization with the United States and the allies, Japan, and the microphone was taken away.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Mustafa Kanbey, Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The international system has been going through a very challenging period over the past 2 decades by polarization. A new international system is emerging. Today, multiple crises, complex security threats, uncertainties, internal and international conflicts, transnational terrorism, irregular migration, environmental issues, food and energy insecurity, and economic resistance pose serious threats to global peace, security, and stability. Under these circumstances, it is vital to opt for the escalation. As an integral part of the European security structure, Turkey is aware of its regional and global missions and fully implementing its responsibilities. Turkey has determined fight against all terrorist organizations. Transnational organized crimes and illegal migration contribute to the European security and stability. As Turkey seeks to cooperate with the EU, it expects the same attitude from its partners and allies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Jevrosima Pejovic, Montenegro.
Dear fellow colleagues, I will use this opportunity to emphasize one important issue. At present, Montenegro's information space is deeply compromised by the effort from Eastern propaganda outlets, which actively works to undermine public trust in the EU. As Montenegro moves closer to EU accession, we anticipate a significant escalation of anti-EU disinformation campaign. This external manipulation of public opinion poses a direct threat to the democratic processes that underpin the EU aspirations. The most effective countermeasure the EU can take is to bolster the independence and resilience of Montenegro's media landscape. And that's just one of the reasons why the EU must ensure that the integration of the Western Balkan is based on the merits of individual countries rather than proceeding as a regional bloc. A merit-based approach will reward those countries that undertake the necessary reforms and align themselves with the EU standards, sending a powerful signal that the EU enlargement process remains credible and attainable. And this is very important, especially in this globally dangerous moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Hisen Berisha from Kosovo.
Dear parliamentarians, it is important that the countries that aspire to become EU members are seen in the framework of this strategy by supporting these countries and also the Republic of Kosovo in creating the conditions for beginning with implementation of this strategy as a new member in arrival within the big European family. Therefore, your strategy is good as it includes the changes of the security context within the Western Balkans region, taking into consideration the extent of the hybrid war that Russia aims in this geographical area. Kosovo is ready to implement the norms as required in this strategy so that in the period 25-26 our country also contributes to the collective security of the big European family. Republic of Kosovo is an independent, sovereign and democratic state. We are building institutions and developing democracy where every citizen will feel at home, just as we will feel in the large European family, of which we aspire to be a part of. As a state, we're facing Serbia's destructiveness in politics, economy, and security, but this doesn't surprise us. What surprises us are some statements by international leaders encouraging Serbia to continue with the same unchanged attitudes towards Kosovo, while political and diplomatic pressure is being directed at Kosovo, keeping us under sanction measures. We, as people who have lived for a long time under occupation and violence, were forced to become migrants. In the generous countries of Europe and the world, even though we were unequal during the war, we had God on our side and our allies of freedom and democracy legally regulated our free movement through visa liberalization for Kosovo. A colleague from Lithuania emphasized that to have a peace, a balance of power is needed. Today, Serbia is turning into a military hegemony in the region. But why? From whom does it expect to be attacked? Only Serbia and the region nurtures ambitions towards neighboring states, threatens them, and discriminates against national minorities within its own jurisdiction. But together, we can achieve much more in addressing local, regional, and international issues. In conclusion, let us celebrate the greatness of the European nations. Let us pray for the best for our nations and commit to working together for a brighter and more prosperous future.
Speaker is Mr. Mircea Chelaru from Romania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last but not the least, dear fellow, my European sisters and brothers, I am listening here excellent speeches, plus at the same time a lot of dreams. We discussed today about the geopolitics, but where? Inside of an endless global disorder. The main shifts in the current geopolitics is simply defined from the recognized international rules to the local broken rules and the politics actions to the fait accompli. Many of you, dear colleagues, have spoken only about the war and how to urge it. But what about the peace? Where are the peacemakers? Where are the peacekeepers? Believe me, the most expensive things in the world is the peace. For it is worth to pay as much as needed, but with an unique exception. The price should not be the freedom itself. Let's invest in peace, my friends, as a unique guarantee for the life for future generation, for our civilization. This is the real politics. And together, I ask you, let's save Europe because it's in our power. Let's make Europe great again as a unique earth, but not anyhow, but during in our lives. Respectfully, thanks for you, my dears.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, now I would like to give the floor to our keynote speakers. First, I would like to ask our State Secretary Péter Sztáray to come up here. Up to you, as you like. Let's come here because it's better for video. For the Ministry of Interior, you know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for all these very important and interesting remarks relevant to our subject of discussion. I would like to pick up a couple of them only because I know it's a bit late and you have covered so many different issues that maybe it's better now to focus them and to narrow down the subject. So first, strategic autonomy. I think it was raised by one of our Greek colleagues. Yes, I spoke about it, but I think that's a big question of the future. If we can increase European defense capabilities, that will strengthen Europe, not only in the area of the military, but also politically. If Europe wants to be global or Europe wants to be a foreign policy factor, then it needs more military capabilities. It's so important. And then we will have a higher level of strategic autonomy, and that will just strengthen the Union. European countries have done a lot in the past 10 years, but not enough, I agree. At the Wales summit, at the NATO summit in Wales, 10 years ago, there was a pledge by everybody, all the member states of NATO, to reach a 2% level GDP-wise in defense spending. And still, there are 8 to 10 NATO members who have not reached that. These are all European, well, no, except one, but most of them are European NATO members. So I think there is room to do more, and we have to do more, but we have started a good path, the right path, to strengthen ourselves. The Serbian colleague raised very difficult questions, but thank you for acknowledging my Prime Minister's activity, which was based on his national capacity, not on his capacity as the President of the Council of the European Union, and it's important to say he stated that. The message of that peace mission was that someone has to start generating talks between the parties. As I said, we are not big enough to achieve that, but there are other countries who have a stake, and that was why he visited several countries, Moscow, Beijing, and he also talked to other players, Turkey, US, because these are the countries who may push the warring parties and who may get us closer to peace. Of course, we don't have the crystal ball. We don't know what will be the outcome of this conflict. What we can hope for is that we can reach peace the sooner, the better. And the EU has to have a role, but then we have to take ourselves very seriously. And if you speak about enlargement, then I think it's a necessity for the European Union to enlarge, first to the Western Balkans, and then we will see who else is eligible and able to live up to the conditions of accession. Third, the Austrian colleague, Herr Troch, yes, I agree that Europe has a role in the world. We have to export peace. And instead of exporting democracy values, whatever, we need to strengthen ourselves, and we don't have to complain if someone is stronger than us. We have to live up to the challenge, like the one in the area of technology with China. I think that's a very good example, because we don't have to complain, we have to cooperate, and we have to develop our own capabilities. And then, yes, Turkey, Mr. Akar. I think Turkey has a strategic role in tackling the migration problem, and Hungary has been advocating for that for 10 years, more than 10 years now, that the European Union and Turkey work very closely together, and that the European Union also financially support Turkey in maintaining the stability. Turkey has more than 4 million refugees being hosted, and if those refugees would embark on the road towards west, towards us, I think that would be a collapse, a possible collapse situation for the European Union. So let's be serious about it. Let's take Turkey seriously, and let's work very closely together with them, because we need that cooperation, and it's a mutual interest. It's not only our interest, it's also Turkey's interest. And then Montenegro, yes. We have to underline merit-based approach is very important, and we totally agree upon that. And there is a lot of talk about possible gradual integration. We think that that's a good idea, to engage candidate countries as much as possible in different concrete areas before full-fledged membership. One thing is important, that this does not postpone the concrete accession of the candidate countries. So gradual integration is fine, but that shouldn't be postponing the concrete accession of the candidate countries. And I think Montenegro has proven that if someone wants, can deliver, and I think you are very close actually to making the next decisive step. And the Hungarian presidency will do its best to push you as close as possible. And finally, the Romanian colleague, yes, peace. That's the catchword. If we don't talk about peace and how we can get closer to peace and how we can extend the zone of stability and security around the European Union, then we are missing an opportunity, and then we are not going in the right direction. So that's why my government is putting so much emphasis on that, and that's why we repeat all the time that we have to work for peace, and we have to work for stability and prosperity. So with that, I thank you once again for your attention. I close my remarks and wish you a nice séjour in Budapest. Goodbye.
Thank you, Peter, very much. Mrs. Pia Kauma.
Dear Mr. Chair, dear colleague parliamentarians, I'm not going to comment each individual debate speakers, but I'm going to say just a few words to conclude what I wanted to say in my speech earlier. First of all, I think that it is very important for us to improve early warning systems to prevent disagreements from escalating into crisis in the first place. And that is what we see now, for example, in the case of Ukraine and in the case of the Middle East. Your Excellencies, my home country, Finland, is going to be the chair country for the OSCE next year. And as a word of conclusion, I would like to reflect on the unique perspective that my home country, Finland, brings to our discussions on multilateral cooperation and peace building. I often reflect on the wisdom of our former president, Martti Ahtisaari, who observed that true security requires more than silencing weapons. Peace also requires justice and mutual understanding. And I'm convinced that this motto will guide our country's chairpersonship of the OSCE in 2025, which I also view as a vital opportunity to further strengthen the partnership between the OSCE and the European Union executive structures. I look forward to building on the progress achieved in the past years in our European Union countries and also within the OSCE countries to address the challenges that lie ahead with renewed determination and our collaborative spirit. I thank you all for your attention and look forward to your comments and questions also in the upcoming conferences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to give the floor to Nicolas Pascal de la Parte. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will be very brief. I'm the last speaker. I think that one thing that we can agree upon is that we have to increase our level of ambition in the European defense. I think that what we agreed upon in the strategic compact in 2022, they have deployment force, quick deployment force of 5,000 contingents on the ground. It's not enough. It's not enough at all. I remember, I am getting old, I remember in the head goal line in Helsinki in 1999, in which the European Union, after the war in the Balkans, we decided to be able to deploy 60,000 soldiers for 6 months. Now, 5,000. I know this it means only for the rapid deployment force, but 5,000 is not enough. We have to increase the level of ambition, and at the same time to be aware that, as I said before, the capabilities are national, and we have to accommodate the conflicts and our forces in accordance to the threat. If the level of ambition has to be increased, we need also the support of our citizens, something that has been also raised here. And I am not sure that we have, all of us in our member countries, the full support of our citizens to build up European defense. Because according to the last surveys I have read, when our citizens are asked if they want a better European unity concerning defense and security matters, they say, of course, I think that Europe has to have a single voice and Europe has to be a global player in security and defense matters. Second question, are you ready to pay more taxes for that? The question is, of course not. Then we have here a gap. We have here a gap. Everybody wants a better defense, but has to be paid by somebody else, not by myself, by somebody else, because we have been living, as I said before, with the dividends of peace for many, many years, and we have subrogated our defense to the United States for decades, and we have been living in societies in which defense was an asset taken for granted. It's not anymore like that, and that's why we have to be honest and blunt with our people and say defense needs money. Defense is the other side of the medal for prosperity, for democracy, and for freedom. Without defense, you cannot have prosperity, neither freedom nor personal rights. If we are not able to put behind the support of our citizens, we will not be able to create the Europe of defense. I am afraid that most of our citizens think that defense is a matter of people in uniform only, military men, policemen, but not of them. And it's something that, again, we have to make good reflection here in the European institutions in order to create instruments of diffusion of information, of conviction, and of preaching how necessary it is for everybody to be aware that there is no defense without putting money on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all three of our keynote speakers. Very important ideas and initiatives have been spoken by you. I would like to draw your attention that in 1992, in this very hall, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly was established. I personally was privileged to participate at that event. With these, I would like to conclude the session, our last session, and without further ado, we will proceed to the closing of our conference. Allow me a few closing remarks. First of all, thank you very much for being here in Budapest. Thank you for being together and sharing your ideas. Thanks for the discussion. I think everybody who wanted to say what he thinks did have the opportunity. Our discussions, in my opinion, have confirmed my conviction that our debates are not strategic but tactical. Important but tactical debates. Indeed, the main common strategic objectives of foreign and security policy and defense policy are fundamentally shared by all European political forces. As the EU treaty is based on the values of the UN Charter, one of our main common goals is to preserve or unfortunately restore the core values of our world order: peace and security, sovereign equality of nations, human rights, and cooperation for the global common good. Our common goal is to restore the rule of international law, a world that follows the rules as soon as possible, preferably with guarantees that prevent it from suffering another blow like the one it suffered from the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Our common goal is that European integration should be open to all European nations who voluntarily participate and meet the conditions. Our common denominator should be that they can join the European integration on an equal basis and with equal rights, in such a way that neither the newcomers' interests nor the interests of the current EU members are harmed. Our common goal is for the European Union to protect and promote its values and its interests. How to achieve all this is a matter of many different ideas and many different views. Meeting and sometimes clashing, and I think we have succeeded in this task. I have little doubt that the leaders of the CFSP and the CSDP are doing the right thing when they seek to benefit from the tactical diversity that surrounds the unity of our strategic objectives. The EU's strength lies in the fact that it can rely not only on its foreign service, but also on the interconnections, ambitions and strengths of the member states, and even the political forces within the member states. Few organizations in the world have this potential, what we colleagues embody in this room. How many international and foreign experts are among us? Just to ask one question. If we can successfully build on this, we can reverse the trends that are not working in Europe's favor, restore Europe's original authority in the world, and make Europe once again a world standard setter, if you like, great again. For this purpose, the conference reviewing the CFSP and CSDP has provided, continues to provide, and will continue to provide important intellectual ammunition in the future. We must maintain, perhaps I can say on behalf of all of us, we will maintain the spirit of dialogue and constructive debate. See you soon during the Polish EU presidency. And now I would like to inform you that the co-chairs of this conference, Mr. Kósa, Mr. McAllister and myself, agreed on a co-chair's statement containing the main reflections on the topics of this IPC. You will receive it electronically, and it will be also available on our presidency parliamentary website. And now please allow me to invite the head of the Polish delegation to present the upcoming 26th edition of this IPC, which will take place during the presidency next year. Andrzej Grzyb. Andrzej, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Zsolt, chairmen, Foreign Affairs committees and Defense Committee, Zsolt Nemet and Lajos Kósa, fellow parliamentarians. On behalf of the Polish delegation, I would like to thank you for the preparation and atmosphere of the 25th Conference of Commons Foreign and Security Policy and Common Security and Defense Policy. Thank you for your today's debates, interventions, and atmosphere of the conference and yesterday's musically framed dinner on the ship on the Danube. At the same time, I would like to inform you that the preparation of the 26th conference during the Polish presidency is decisive. I invite you to Warsaw from March 23rd to 25th, so in the spring, as our colleague Zsolt Nemet said yesterday evening. The program, together with the invitation, will be forwarded in your national parliaments and the European Parliament. Centrally, the priorities of the common security and defense policy and foreign and security policy will be on the agenda, as well as security problems in Baltic Sea area and region, and Russia war against Ukraine might be the topics of conference. So I invite you on behalf of defense committees and foreign committees of the Sejm and the Senate in early spring to Warsaw. And I assure Zsolt that the weather will be as good as in Budapest. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andrzej. Thank you very much for your kind invitation, and we will do our utmost to meet again in Warsaw. Last but not least, I would like to thank the interpreters and the parliamentary administration for their valuable work. Everybody's tireless efforts in preparing and managing this event, which was not a small event. I do hope every participant has found the 25th IPC on the CFSP, CSDP here in Budapest useful and memorable. Have a good trip home. Thank you very much.